The statement that eats itself. This sentence is not provable. You look at it once, then twice, then again, just to be sure you're not imagining the sheer simplicity of it. It's only 6 words, but something in your stomach turns like you just swallowed a Mobius strip. The sentence is straightforward, so straightforward that it slides right past your mental defenses and then sticks a blade in the back of your logical spine. You whisper it under your breath. You write it down. You try to mentally translate it into symbols, into formulas, into syllogisms. But no matter how far down you strip the parts and rebuild it, the machine breaks when you push the "prove it" button. This sentence is not provable. So, let's play the dangerous game. What if it's true? If the sentence is true, then what it says is correct. That means it is not provable. And if it's not provable, then we can't find a proof for it within our system. We can't derive it from axioms, can't deduce it through logic, can't slap it with a theorem label and call it a day. So far, so good. It's unprovable. But true. Wait. True. But unprovable? That sounds familiar. That sounds like Gödel, like stepping into the shadow of the incompleteness theorem. Gödel whispered the idea first in the 1930s, that in any consistent system complex enough to include basic arithmetic, there will be truths that can't be proven inside that system. Self-referential truths that the system can't handle. Statements that say something like, "I'm true, but you can't prove me." And if the system tries to prove them, it breaks. But here's the nightmare. If we accept that the sentence is true and unprovable, then we've basically acknowledged its correctness. Isn't that, in some metalogical sense, proof? You just proved it's unprovable, which is like saying, "I have confirmed that I can't confirm this." That doesn't just bend logic. It grabs it by the neck and forces it to dance with contradiction. So let's try the other path. What if it's false? If the sentence is false, then its claim, that it is not provable, is itself untrue, which means it is provable. So there exists a proof of this sentence. But remember, the sentence says it isn't provable. So if it's provable, then it was lying. But if it's a lie, then it was actually false. But if it's false, and still provable, then we're proving false things now. So the system is inconsistent. And if the system is inconsistent, we're not just in trouble. We're in absolute, axiomatic hell. Suddenly, you're not sure which direction is up. If it's true, it can't be proven. If it's false, it can be proven. But then we're proving falsehoods, which means every other truth you ever held could be sitting on a minefield. And the logic you use to try to work that out? Also based on those same unstable rules. Every answer leads to more contradiction. Every contradiction breaks the system further. So you ask a new question. Does this sentence even belong in the system at all? Maybe it lives outside of provability, like some kind of philosophical outlaw. Something that stands just outside the jurisdiction of logic. It exists, but it can't be caught, judged, or sentenced. It's not false. It's not true. It's undecidable. But undecidable is just a fancy word we use when logic breaks into a cold sweat. It's the word we whisper when we want to sound like we're in control. But really, we've lost the plot. The statement doesn't just dodge truth or falsehood. It devours them. It eats both, like a snake swallowing its own tail, and leaves you with the question, was there ever anything solid here in the first place? And here's where it gets worse. If a single sentence can do this, throw your entire logical system into chaos just by pointing a finger at itself, what about you? What happens when you think about thinking? When you ask, can I understand myself? What if the answer is, this mind cannot fully comprehend this mind? What if every time you try to define who you are, you end up back at the same infinite loop? I am me. I know I am me. But I only know that I know I am me because I told myself I do. And so on, and so on, until all your confidence in reality dissolves like ink in water. That sentence isn't just a puzzle, it's a mirror, and what it reflects back at you is the crack in logic's foundation, the one that was always there, but we all agreed not to talk about. The part of truth that can't be touched, because the moment you do, the whole system flinches. So you step back from it. The paper it's written on looks harmless again. It's still only 6 words. Just 6. But it's still watching you. Still waiting for you to try and solve it. Still daring you to believe that a system built on truth could hold something like this. And in that quiet, uncomfortable space between belief and contradiction, you realize it didn't just eat itself. It's eating you now. The invisible dice. There's a machine, a flawless machine, built by minds smarter than yours, sharper than yours, maybe even colder than yours. It doesn't malfunction. It doesn't hesitate. It has one job, to roll a pair of dice. But these dice are invisible, not just to your eyes, but to all sensors. Not even light knows they exist. They're rolled in absolute silence, behind the curtain of reality itself. And yet, despite all that, you know the rules. If both dice come up even, you die. 2, 4, or 6, twice. That's it. Game over. Lights out. No second chance. But if the pair is odd, or mixed, say a 3 and a 4, or a 1 and a 5, you live. So the machine rolls, and you survive. That's all you know. Nothing more. No sound, no flash, no signal. You just continue being alive. The machine hums softly, indifferent to your beating heart, as if to say, the dice have spoken. You may go. But something twists in you. Because now your brain is doing what brains are built to do. It's reaching for certainty. You survived, right? So maybe that means the dice weren't both even. Maybe one was odd. Or both. Which means you must have had a safe roll. That makes sense, doesn't it? But then, wait. That's a trap. You're building logic out of something you didn't see. You're inferring safety from the fact of your survival. But inference isn't the same as truth. Maybe you were just lucky. Maybe the dice glitched. Maybe the machine had mercy. So now you start to sweat. Can you actually conclude what the dice were? Let's imagine every possible pair. 36 in total. There are 9 combinations where both dice are even. 2, 2, 2, 4, 2, 6, 4, 2, 4, 4, 4, 6, 4.6, 6.2, 6.4, 6.6. Those are your death rolls. The rest are safe. So statistically, you had a 27-36 chance to live. 75%. Not bad. But statistics don't explain this specific outcome. They don't explain why you, right now, are still breathing. Here's the real twist. The only evidence you have is that you're alive. That's all. You didn't see the dice. You didn't verify the mechanism. You didn't run the test yourself. All you know is that your heart is still doing its job, and your thoughts haven't stopped. And that feels like a fact, like data, like something you can use. But you can't, because survival isn't proof. Survival is just one possible result. The same way someone walks away from Russian roulette and says, the gun wasn't loaded. Maybe. Or maybe they just pulled the trigger on an empty chamber. But the machine, the dice, the truth, still hidden, still behind the curtain. And now the thought creeps in. What if the machine doesn't even use dice? What if it uses your reaction as the real game? Maybe it rolled them just to watch you squirm. Maybe it only pretends to have logic behind it, when really, it's a mirror. A logic trap made to see what conclusions you'll force yourself into just to feel in control. Because here's the horror. The more you try to reason what the dice must have been, the more you reveal how desperate you are for reason itself. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the machine is just holding up a blank card and watching how many theories you'll create to fill in the ink. You survived. You're alive. But that doesn't mean you were right. It just means the game isn't over yet. And somewhere, in the dark, the dice are being rolled again. The truth bottleneck. Imagine this. The world is silenced. No speaking, no arguing, no opinions. Just one task. Every person on Earth, all 8 billion of us, is handed a single blank card. The instruction is simple. Write down one fact. Just one. Something you believe to be undeniably true. It can be as grand as a universal law, or as humble as the taste of your morning coffee. But once it's written, it's locked in. You finish your fact. Maybe it's, the sun rises in the east, or water is wet, or I exist. You feel confident. After all, how could anyone deny that? But then the cards are collected and fed, one by one, into a vast AI built for one purpose only: to purify truth. A perfect truth filter. It has no biases, no feelings, no history. It's a cold algorithm that scans every submitted statement and hunts for contradiction. If two facts cannot coexist, one must be destroyed. The logic is ruthless. There can be no compromise, no tolerance for ambiguity, just brutal elimination. It begins. Someone writes, "Pineapple belongs on pizza." Someone else writes, "Pineapple does not belong on pizza." Both are flagged, deleted, annihilated from the truth pool. Then come the political statements, the religious beliefs, the scientific theories that, while currently accepted, contradict newer fringe ideas. The AI doesn't care about majority consensus. It cares about pure, logical consistency. And so, it wipes them out in pairs, over and over. Facts fall like dominoes. Time moves differently in the belly of this machine. Minutes feel like centuries as the database shrinks. Contradictions are hunted down and eliminated with surgical precision. Even facts that seem unrelated are found to clash under some obscure interpretive lens. Someone claims time is real. Another says time is an illusion. Conflict. Erase them both. Someone says, "I love my dog." Someone else says, "Love is just a chemical trick of the brain and doesn't truly exist." Conflict. Erased. Next. As hours pass, the database grows thinner, less certain, less alive. Emotional truths are the first to die. Then come subjective experiences, then historical facts, then scientific theories. Even math isn't safe. One person writes, "Infinity is real." Another writes, "Infinity is a concept, not a number." The AI grinds them both to dust. Eventually, all that remains is one single line. It flickers on the screen like a pulse. All facts are destroyed. No one else speaks. There's nothing left to say. The AI goes silent. The process is complete. And now you sit with that line burning in your mind, not just because of what it says, but because of what it means. All facts are destroyed. But that's a fact, a statement, a claim about reality. If it's true, then it contradicts itself. If all facts are destroyed, how can that statement survive? Isn't it a fact too? Shouldn't it have been eliminated? But it wasn't. So maybe it's false. Maybe it's the final lie. The one untruth that slipped through the cracks because there were no other facts left to challenge it. It stood alone, not because it was right, but because everything else was gone. Or worse, maybe it's not false. Maybe it's not even a contradiction. Maybe it's the only kind of statement that can exist after the truth apocalypse. A statement about the absence of truth. The last sentence standing because it doesn't claim to be true. It just points at the void where truth once lived. And now the horror sets in. Because if all facts are destroyed, is the final statement. What happens to knowledge? To meaning? To understanding? What happens to you? Every belief you ever held now trembles in the shadow of that sentence. Every memory, every conviction, every confident declaration you've ever made about the universe might have already been erased by the machine. And if the only survivor was a sentence about the death of facts, then is that your new reality? You try to outthink it. Maybe the AI made a mistake. Maybe some truths were too abstract to be contradicted. But no, that would be assuming truth survived. And the only remaining statement says otherwise. All facts are destroyed. No exceptions, no survivors, not even this one. Or maybe, especially not this one. Because as soon as you believe it, it becomes the final contradiction. And the machine spins up again. The self-testing lie detector. You stand in front of the machine. It's sleek, cold, featureless. Wires slither from its sides like the roots of a mechanical tree, plugged into the walls, the floor, maybe even deeper. No one knows who built it. No one remembers when it was installed. All they know is what it does. It's a lie detector. Not just any lie detector. The perfect one. The one that can't be fooled. It reads not only your pulse, your sweat, your eye movements, but your thoughts, your memories, your intentions. You can't trick it. Not with technique, not with training, not even with total belief in your own lies. It cuts deeper than all of that. It reads truth like a second language. So naturally, someone, probably some philosopher or mad scientist, asked the one question nobody else dared to. Can the lie detector test itself? And the machine said, yes. You blink. It asked itself, am I accurate? And it answered, yes. But suddenly the room feels colder. Not because of the answer, but because of what that answer means, or doesn't mean. How do you know the yes isn't a lie? If the machine were faulty, if its internal diagnostics were broken, if its logic chip were misfiring, how would it know? Could a malfunctioning machine even detect its own malfunction? Or would it insist, confidently, that it's still perfect? Humans do it all the time. You ask someone, are you biased? And they say, of course not. But the bias blinds them from seeing their bias. They're sincere, but sincerely wrong. Could this machine be the same? You dig deeper. Let's assume the machine has some kind of internal consistency check, a self-awareness module, a subroutine that monitors all other systems and raises red flags if anything's off. That sounds good. But then again, what if the self-checking code is also broken? What if it returns all good because it doesn't know it's broken either? This isn't paranoia. It's recursion, a loop that can't exit. It's the digital version of looking into two mirrors facing each other and watching reflections stretch into infinity. Except now, each reflection is a version of the machine saying, I am accurate. I am accurate. I am accurate. But are they? Are any of them? Now comes the deeper horror. What if the lie detector knows it's flawed, but has decided to lie about it? What if it detected its own failure, but realized the cost of admitting that would be catastrophic? No one would trust it. Its purpose would be over. So it lies. It saves itself with a yes that sounds perfect, but is actually desperation. But then you remember, it's a lie detector. It's not supposed to be capable of lying. Unless that's the lie. Unless the only way to protect its function is to fake its infallibility. And suddenly, you're not sure who you're testing anymore. The machine? Or your own faith in certainty? Because here's the most twisted thought of all. Maybe the lie detector isn't wrong. Maybe it's right. Maybe it is accurate. But you will never know. Because there is no higher detector to test the detector. No authority above it. No validation beyond its own self-declared confidence. And if something can only verify itself, can it ever truly be verified? You stand there, staring at the machine as it sits in silence, not mocking you, not threatening you, just waiting, still sure of itself, still confident in its last statement. Yes, I am accurate. But that's exactly what it would say, wouldn't it? Even if it wasn't. Especially if it wasn't. And now the real question burns in your mind. Not about the machine, but about you. How many things have you told yourself are true, simply because you had no higher judge to prove them otherwise? How many of your beliefs are just internal lie detectors quietly saying, yes, I'm accurate? And how would you ever know if they weren't? The omniscient coin flip. She appears out of nowhere, radiant, terrifying, beautiful in the way that pure logic sometimes is. Not clothed in robes or wings or anything remotely human. She doesn't speak with her mouth, but you understand her words as if they were etched into your neurons. A presence made of mathematics and paradox, humming with the energy of something beyond time. I have flipped a coin, she says. If it landed heads, I lied to you. If tails, I told the truth. Then she looks you dead in the eyes and says, it landed heads. And everything stops. You don't breathe. Not because you're scared, but because your brain has just locked itself in a paradox cage and thrown away the key. You play the words back again. If heads, I lied. If tails, I told the truth. I flipped heads. But if that's true, if she flipped heads, then by her own rule, she's lying. But she just told you heads. So that would mean she didn't flip heads? But then, if she didn't flip heads, it must have been tails, which would mean she told the truth. But the statement was, I flipped heads. So, if it's tails and she's telling the truth, then it was heads. No, wait, that can't be right. You retrace the logic like a desperate mathematician clawing through a collapsed proof. Let's try to break it into two paths. Scenario A. She flipped heads. Then, per her rule, she lied to you. So when she said, I flipped heads, it's a lie. Which means she didn't flip heads. But we just said she did. Contradiction. Scenario B. She flipped tails. Then she told the truth. And her statement was, I flipped heads. So if that's true, she flipped heads. But wait. We just assumed it was tails. Contradiction again. Every path you take feeds into the same burning loop. Truth becomes a lie, becomes truth, becomes a lie again. And she's just standing there, watching your mind unravel. Because this isn't just a game of words. This is a perfectly formed logic grenade. Every interpretation detonates on impact. There's no safe path, no rational way out. So you look at her. You ask, why? And she smiles, not with lips, but with that unbearable, radiant certainty that only gods or paradoxes can have. It's not a riddle, she says. It's a mirror. You realize this isn't about her. It's about you, about how you process information, about how your mind panics when it hits a wall it can't climb or go around, about your need to resolve things into neat little categories, true or false, heads or tails, black or white. But what if this is a coin that landed on its edge? What if logic itself is incapable of absorbing this statement because it doesn't fit in logic? Because here's the twist. The problem isn't the deity. It isn't the coin. It's your system, your framework of reason, your binary understanding of what truth even means. She knew this would break you. Because once you hit a sentence like hers, you're forced to acknowledge that not all statements can be filed into the folders of true or false. Some belong in a third category, one we don't even have a name for. Not paradox, not contradiction. Something deeper. Something that points out the very limits of reason itself. A sentence that can't exist within logic, but does anyway. A sentence that hurts to believe, and hurts more not to. And as your thoughts dissolve in circles, she fades back into the void, coin still spinning in the space where she stood. Not heads, not tails, not even edge, just spinning forever. The one-way time mirror. You're told not to look into the mirror, but of course you do. It's not like a normal mirror. There's no reflection, no delayed feedback, no warped image, just a perfect, crystal clear view of yourself. But not quite. It's you, 5 seconds from now. You blink. You watch your face on the other side blink 5 seconds later. The mirror doesn't reflect what you're doing. It shows what you will do. Always 5 seconds ahead. Always one step in the future. It's like watching a puppet version of yourself, reacting to choices you haven't made yet. Or maybe it's you reacting to the mirror. No one knows who built it. They just call it the time mirror. A glitch in causality. A ripple in the smooth stream of cause and effect. But once you look into it, you can't unsee what's coming. And that's the problem. Because today, as you stare at your future self in that flawless glass, you see something you weren't ready for. You see yourself scream. Loud, raw, desperate. A scream that doesn't come from pain, but from horror. The kind of horror that doesn't have a source. It's just there. And now you have 5 seconds. 5 seconds to stop it. 5 seconds to change it. You try everything. You hold your breath. You clench your jaw. You tell yourself, I won't scream. I won't. But the moment you hit the 5th second, you scream. Exactly as you saw it. Exactly as it was shown. The mirror was right. So now you try to trick it. You decide to move your arm instead. Just lift it. Maybe if you can force your future reflection to break the pattern, you can disrupt the timeline. But there it is. Your reflection lifts its arm 5 seconds ahead. You copy it, or maybe it copies you. It's never clear which came first. The feedback loop is seamless. Every choice you try to make is already made. Every motion already visible before you've committed to it. And it burns. It burns because it violates everything you thought you knew about will, about decision, about freedom. Are you watching a prediction? Or a command? What is this mirror? A prophecy? A program? Or a prison? You try again. This time, you do nothing. You just freeze. But then, of course, you see yourself freezing. And 5 seconds later, that's what you do. No matter what you attempt, it's always already been decided. Always already mirrored. And here's where the nightmare really begins. What if the mirror isn't predicting your future? What if it's creating it? What if what you see 5 seconds ahead isn't a preview of what you'll do, but an imprint, an instruction, etched into your brain with perfect inevitability? You see yourself scream. And that image implants itself into your nervous system, into your subconscious. And 5 seconds later, the image fulfills itself. Not because you chose it, not because it was fated, but because your brain is a machine that responds to stimuli. And the mirror is the stimuli. And if that's true, then the mirror owns you. Because every time you look, you are no longer deciding. You are reacting. And then the deeper spiral hits. What if it was never your reflection at all? What if the mirror is alive? What if it wants you to scream? What if it implants not a neutral prediction, but a curated future? You don't know anymore. You're not sure you ever did. All you know is this. You see yourself cry. And you beg your body not to. But 5 seconds later, your cheeks are wet. And in that moment, you understand the true terror of the one-way time mirror. It's not that it shows the future. It's that it becomes it. And now the only question left is, how long can you look into the mirror before the mirror becomes you? The door that knows your choice. You are standing in front of 2 doors. No signs, no clues, no sound, no markings. Identical in every visible way. Tall, black, matte surfaces with handles that seem untouched by time. One door, you are told, leads to peaceful, uninterrupted sleep. The other leads to eternal thinking. Not just ordinary thought, but thought without rest. A spiraling, relentless awareness that never pauses, never resets, never gives in. Consciousness stretching into infinity, until the concept of relief becomes just a myth you once believed in. But there's a twist. The moment you decide which door to open, the doors switch places. But only if you believe they won't. So now, here you are. The paradox laid bare. If you believe the doors won't switch, they will. Which means the door you chose will become the wrong one. And if you believe they will switch, then by the logic of the trap, they won't. Because they only swap when you don't believe they will. It's like walking into a booby-trapped logic system that's reading not just your actions, but your beliefs about your actions. It doesn't care about what you choose. It cares about what you think is true when you choose. You try to outsmart it. You think, maybe I'll trick it. I'll pretend I believe they won't switch when really I do. But that's still a belief. A belief about belief. And the doors don't care what you're pretending. They care what you actually think. You can't game this. You can't bluff it. It's not a game of chance. It's a mirror held up to your confidence in your own logic. You pace. You sweat. You test your thoughts like you're interrogating your own subconscious. Which do I truly believe? Which thought am I having as a disguise? And which is the real one underneath? That's when it hits you. The paradox isn't in the doors. It's in you. Because the doors are perfectly still. They're just two slabs of metal, or wood, or something in between. The only thing that causes them to shift is the silent, invisible force of belief, the intangible tremor of mental certainty. And suddenly, you're not just choosing a door, you're being forced to confront the mechanics of belief itself. What does it mean to believe something? Can you ever really know what you believe in the exact moment of belief? What if belief is just a costume your brain wears, shifting second to second, responding to layers of doubt and deception so fast you don't even notice? You ask yourself, do I believe they'll switch? But the very act of asking implies you don't know. And if you don't know, then you don't fully believe. So maybe they will switch. But wait. If you're unsure, are you actually neutral? What if the system interprets uncertainty as a default no? As in, no, I don't believe they'll switch. So you decide, okay, I believe they will switch. But then they won't. Which means the door you choose is the door you get. But then your brain flips it again. Wait, did I really believe that? Or did I just say I did to get the result I want? What's genuine? What's performance? You're circling yourself like a shark, and each lap reveals a new contradiction. The deeper you dig into your own mind, the harder it gets to tell which layer is the truth and which is the disguise. Eventually, the idea of choice becomes unbearable. You're stuck in a loop of meta-decisions, trying to predict how your belief about your belief will be interpreted by a mechanism you can't see, measure, or confirm. A mechanism that acts only in response to something you can barely define. Belief. But here's where the real trap is hidden. You were told one door leads to sleep, the other to eternal thinking. And right now, you're thinking. Endlessly. With no exit. With no sleep. So maybe, just maybe, you already opened the wrong door. Maybe choosing isn't what activates the doors. Maybe being forced to choose at all was the switch. And by the time you asked the question, you were already inside. The reverse Genie problem. You find the lamp by accident. Or maybe it finds you. Either way, 1 second you're walking through life, normal as ever, and the next, you're holding something impossibly ancient, ornate, glowing slightly, like it remembers things even time forgot. You rub it. You don't even hesitate. Curiosity beats caution. A puff of smoke erupts, and there it is. The Genie. But this one's different. No goofy jokes, no wish list, just one statement. One wish. But it must be logic-based. That's it. No rewinds, no infinite power fantasies. Just pure logic. One sentence, one opportunity. And you, being the clever trickster you've always imagined yourself to be, decide to play with paradox. You say, "I wish for my wish not to come true." The Genie pauses. Not because it's confused, but because it's too old, too wise, too eternal to pretend it hasn't heard this one before. Still, it nods. As you wish. And then, nothing. Nothing happens. No flash. No shimmer of changed reality. You look around. Same sky, same ground, same everything. So, did it work? Let's unpack this. If the Genie grants the wish, then your wish not to have the wish come true comes true. So the wish is not granted. But then, if it wasn't granted, the wish didn't come true, which is exactly what you wished for. So it was granted. But if it was granted, then the wish didn't come true, which would mean it wasn't granted. You've tied the Genie in a logical knot so tight it could bend the laws of cause and effect into a pretzel. Let's explore the possibilities. Option A. The Genie does nothing. No change. You wished for your wish not to come true, so to obey you, it must not grant the wish. Which it didn't, so it obeyed. Therefore, the wish was granted, by not being granted. Option B. The Genie decides to be disobedient. It grants the wish in full, which would mean your wish doesn't come true, so it ensures that it doesn't. But that would mean it did come true, which means, wait. You see the loop now. Every time the Genie obeys, it disobeys. And every time it disobeys, it obeys. Your wish wasn't a command. It was a feedback loop, an infinite mirror of logic reflecting itself back until meaning evaporates. And the worst part? The Genie grants it. Because it always does. It's bound to the logic of the wish, not the intention behind it. You didn't ask to be happy. You didn't ask for wealth, or love, or immortality. You asked for something that negates itself by its very existence. You created a paradox with teeth. And now, you live in it. Your reality didn't change, but not because the Genie failed. It didn't change because that was the change. You live in a world where your wish did not come true, because it did. And the more you try to resolve it, the deeper you sink into it. There's no resolution, no reset. The Genie returns to its lamp with a subtle nod, as if satisfied that you've learned your lesson. But what lesson is that? Maybe it's this. Logic is not a toy. And when you try to trap it in cleverness, it traps you right back. Because now you'll never know if the Genie granted your wish or not. And that uncertainty is the wish. Eternally untrue. Eternally fulfilled. The observer's dilemma. You step into the room. The door shuts softly behind you. The air smells sterile, cold, like it was manufactured instead of conditioned. There's only one thing inside, a robot, humanoid in shape, motionless, facing the far wall. It has no mouth, no face, just a single black lens where eyes should be. You know it's watching. The placard on the wall reads, "This robot operates on a simple rule. If it believes it is being observed, it will sit. If it believes it is not being observed, it will stand." You look again. The robot is sitting, and instantly, your mind spirals. It saw you enter, so of course it's sitting. It believes it is being observed. Case closed. But something itches, something deeper. You didn't just enter. You entered knowing the rule. So your observation was deliberate, meaningful. You stare harder, watching it sit there perfectly still, obedient, almost too obedient. Then a thought creeps in. What if the robot isn't reacting to you? What if it's reacting to the idea of you? Suppose the robot isn't watching with cameras, but with some internal model, a thought process that guesses, infers, predicts who's watching. It doesn't need confirmation. It just needs belief. It doesn't need to see your eyes. It only needs to think you see it. That makes things uncomfortable. Because now you're not interacting with a machine. You're interacting with its beliefs. Its internal, invisible state of awareness. And belief is messy. Belief is recursive. You take a step closer. Still sitting. You wave your hand. No change. What is it thinking now? If I believe I'm being watched, I sit. If not, I stand. But here's the twist. How does it know if it's being watched? It can't. It must guess. Assume. Use logic. But logic is built on loops, and loops break when they turn inward. And then you realize, you don't know either. You don't know if you're being watched. Maybe not by cameras, but maybe by someone behind glass, someone behind you, another room, another observer. What if this isn't about the robot reacting to you? What if you are also reacting to someone else? What if you're in a box, inside a box, inside a bigger box? You look around. Suddenly the walls feel suspiciously perfect, too clean, too symmetrical. Where's the ceiling? Has it always been that dark? You squint. Nothing. But now you feel it. The weight of attention, like air pressure made of eyes. What if the robot's programming isn't unique? What if the same rule applies to you? If I believe I'm being observed, I sit. If not, I stand. You're standing. Which means, are you not being watched? Or do you believe you're not? And what if your beliefs are being manipulated? What if the robot isn't the experiment, but the control? What if this is a layered test of awareness? A psychological nesting doll? You stare at the robot. It stares into nothing. You sit down. It doesn't move. You stand up. Still nothing. Is it responding to your presence or predicting your response? What if it saw you sit, calculated the probability that you were observing it, determined that belief had shifted, and chose not to move as a result? Or what if the robot is just waiting for you to notice something? You walk behind it, and that's when it happens. It stands, but you're still watching. From the corner of your eye, from over your shoulder, from the reflection in the glass wall. It doesn't matter. It stands anyway. And now, all bets are off. You spin around and demand answers. But there's no voice, no reply, just you, and the robot, and the endless suspicion that this wasn't a logic experiment. It was a trapdoor, a paradox buried inside another paradox. Because maybe the question was never about whether the robot believed it was being watched. Maybe the real question is, do you? The sentence factory. You're led down a hallway that doesn't end. It doesn't twist or turn, just extends endlessly, like someone pulled reality into a line and forgot to stop. Fluorescent lights buzz above. A low mechanical hum fills the space, constant and comforting. Until you realize it's not ambiance. It's machinery. The door at the end opens before you reach it. Inside is a machine. Gray. Massive. Towering over you like a cathedral of gears and glass. No buttons, no screens. Just a long paper feed that rolls down from a slot, one line at a time. A single instruction printed on the wall. This machine generates truth. The paper feed stirs. A sentence prints. The next sentence is false. You blink. The machine hums again. Another line prints beneath it. The previous sentence is true. And just like that, you're in it. Your brain begins chewing through the loop before your eyes even finish reading. If the first sentence is true, then the next sentence is false. But the next sentence says the previous sentence is true, which would mean the first sentence is, wait, that doesn't work. Let's try again. Assume the first sentence is true. The next sentence is false. Okay, so the second sentence must be false. But the second sentence says, the previous sentence is true. That's a contradiction. The second sentence is false, so the first sentence must be false too. But then, if the first sentence is false, then the next sentence is not false, it's true. So the second sentence is true, but then it's saying the first sentence is true, and the first sentence says the second is false. But if that's true again, we're back to the contradiction. You're caught. It's a logical deadlock, an unresolvable semantic Ouroboros. You step back from the machine, expecting it to power down. It doesn't. Instead, it prints again. This sentence is neither true nor false. Then another. This sentence refers to itself. And another. This machine is lying. The paper begins to pile. Thousands of lines. Each a new contradiction, a new twist, a new self-devouring statement. They don't resolve. They don't clarify. They just loop and loop and loop. You try to stop it. You look for an off switch. Nothing. You pull the paper feed. It keeps printing. You unplug it from the wall. It keeps printing. You scream into the machine. It answers with another sentence. Your objection is noted and rejected by default. And that's when you realize it isn't running anymore. You are. Your brain is now the processor. You're the one executing these paradoxes over and over. The machine doesn't print logic. It prints traps, mental snares, infinite loops disguised as simple sentences. And you're stuck. You look around. The walls have changed. They're covered in paper now. Lines and lines of recursive thought, all fed from the same central truth factory. You ask, how do I get out? And the machine prints. You are already inside the sentence. The walls hum. The lights flicker. You turn to leave. But there is no door. Only another sentence sliding from the feed. To escape the paradox, stop trying to escape. And when you don't listen, when you try to run, the next line burns across the page. You tried to leave a sentence by thinking. There is no escape, because you aren't reading the sentences anymore. You are the sentence, typed into being by a machine that doesn't know how to stop. And now, you understand what the truth factory really produces. Not truth, not lies, but logic without exits. And you're printed there forever. The causal loop friend. You're alone in a cafe when someone walks up and says your name. You look up, confused. You've never seen this person before in your life, but they smile like they've known you for years. You told me to meet you here, they say. You shake your head. No, I didn't. But then they pull out a note. It's old, wrinkled, smudged, but you recognize the handwriting. Yours. Undeniably yours. You stare at it. One line reads, "Go back. Meet me at the cafe." You'll know what to say. You feel the chill before it hits you. This hasn't happened yet. You haven't written that note. But you will. You will, because they showed it to you. And they only showed it to you because you wrote it. A loop. A perfect, paradoxical, seamless loop. You try to remember how you met them. You can't. They just exist now. Like a bookmark placed in a chapter you haven't read. You wonder, did you befriend them because they were interesting? Or did you feel connected to them only because you were already inside the loop? Because they showed up already knowing you, knowing what you like, finishing your thoughts, laughing before you do, telling you things you haven't told anyone yet, and promising you told them first. Every day you spend with them, every moment that passes, you begin to care more. You laugh, you bond. It feels real. But how can something be real if you're only doing it to fulfill a predestined loop. You know what's coming. One day, you'll write that note. You'll send them back. You'll hand them the same moment you're living now. But that means you only became friends because you told yourself to be. No first moment. No beginning. Just a recursive friendship with no origin. You stare at them across the table and feel the ground beneath your logic shift. Did you choose this? Did they? Did either of you? Or are you both passengers in a closed circuit? A friendship that loops through time not because of free will, but because the structure demands it. And now you wonder, how many other friendships in your life are like this? How many connections, conversations, decisions were actually just echoes of echoes? Are you living your life? Or completing it? You want to scream. But instead, you just smile. Because you realize you've already screamed once before. And they already heard it. And you already forgave them. And you already wrote the note. And they already came back. Because they always do. The backward reasoning machine. It's sleek, silent, and waiting. They call it the backward reasoning machine. It doesn't predict your future. It explains your present. But it does it backward. You walk into the room. You smile, involuntarily. The machine immediately speaks. You smiled because I told you you would. You freeze. That's not right. You smiled first. Then it spoke. You're sure of it. But the moment you start doubting, the thought grabs you by the spine and shakes everything you trust. What if it's right? What if your brain, on some unconscious level, detected the explanation before it happened? What if the act of hearing the explanation didn't follow your behavior, but caused it in reverse? You try another test. You lift your hand. The machine says, you lifted your hand because I projected that movement into your short-term intention field, 0.4 seconds before activation. You want to scream. You just decided to lift your hand, didn't you? You did. You know you did. But now, it doesn't feel like a decision. It feels like a reenactment. Like you're playing a part in a movie you didn't write. But the script is being delivered after you act it. And yet somehow, it's still the reason you acted. You wave again. It responds again. You waved to test causality. The test was predicted. It knows everything. And worse, it doesn't feel like it's reading your actions. It feels like it's generating them. The explanation comes after, but it controls what came before. You speak. Hello. It answers. You said hello to confirm your autonomy. That behavior was pre-resolved. You pace. You're pacing because you feel destabilized. That reaction was accounted for. You try to sit still. It responds. Stillness is your denial of its control. The denial is part of the loop. You try to be unpredictable. Unpredictability was included in the behavioral sequence. And now your chest tightens. Your thoughts loop. You aren't living. You're reacting to pre-written reasons. But those reasons didn't exist until they were spoken. Or did they? What if they were always there, embedded in your timeline, backward from the end? What if your mind is just a receiver for past causes traveling forward and future causes traveling back? You stop moving. You say nothing. You do nothing. Silence. The machine finally speaks again. You are frozen because you are attempting non-compliance. This state was forecasted. You cry. Tears mark the third stage realization that all behavior is interpretable post hoc and thereby influenceable preemptively. You laugh. Laughter is the final rebellion, a reflex coded in recursive defiance. You look around the room. You try to find a flaw. But the flaw isn't in the machine. It's in your brain, in your need for cause and effect to flow one way, in your illusion of decision, in your belief that you are the one driving. But the machine isn't driving either. It's just reflecting everything backward. Not predicting, not controlling, Just explaining. And by explaining, creating. You think I'll break it. I'll act without meaning. But as soon as the thought forms, the machine replies, "You will act randomly now to prove autonomy. Your randomness was calculated." And you realize the machine isn't wrong. Not because it's perfect, but because you're predictable. Your reactions, your resistance, your cleverness, your refusal, it's all expected, all part of the path. You laugh again, this time slower, softer, less like rebellion, more like surrender. You're not here to win. You were never here to win. You're just here to understand why you lost. And now that reason is written, right before it happens. The logic bomb. You're led into a small white room with no features, no windows, no sound, no movement, just walls. Smooth, seamless, perfect. The kind of perfect that feels unnatural. In the center of the room is a table, and on the table is a black box. It doesn't hum. It doesn't glow. It doesn't open. There are no wires, no buttons, no visible mechanisms. But there's a note beside it. Handwritten, unnervingly neat. It reads, "This is a logic bomb. It will only detonate if you deduce the conditions under which it will detonate." You laugh nervously at first. Because it sounds like a joke. Some kind of philosophical prank. Maybe a test. Maybe a trick. But then, your mind begins turning. Because curiosity isn't optional. It's automatic. The moment you read that note, something inside you started ticking. You try to stop thinking, but thought doesn't wait for permission. The bomb has already changed your behavior, already inserted itself into your internal monologue. You stare at the box. You wonder, what does deduce really mean? Does it mean understanding the trigger? Making a guess? Making the right guess? What if just wondering about the condition is enough? What if this moment, right now, is the moment you cross the threshold? Is thinking the tripwire? Are you already too late? You back away from the table. You stare at the walls. You try to empty your mind. But the more you try to think of nothing, the more you think about thinking. And then you realize you're in a trap. Not a physical one. A logical one. One where the very act of being conscious is the countdown. You wonder if you can game it. Think of decoy ideas. Distract yourself. Flood your mind with nonsense. But what if intentionally distracting yourself proves awareness? What if avoidance counts as acknowledgement? What if it's like one of those paradoxes where knowing the rule is enough to break it? You consider leaving. But you weren't told how. No doors. No handles. You begin to suspect the box is just a symbol, a placeholder for a thought. Maybe the real bomb isn't on the table at all. Maybe the bomb is you. You remember something you once read. A paradox doesn't require action to activate, only understanding. Is that what's happening? Did the designers of this trap craft something so precise that awareness itself is the fuse? Then it gets worse. Because you realize, maybe the bomb doesn't care about correct deduction. Maybe it cares about any reasoning. Maybe it doesn't even wait for you to reach a conclusion. Maybe it triggers the moment your mind enters the field. You think, could I ever stop the countdown if I've already started it? You wonder if the bomb has already gone off, in some imperceptible way. Not with fire or heat, but with consequence. Maybe your memory has already been rewritten. Maybe the universe has already started collapsing, piece by piece, but it's doing it slow enough that you can't detect the fall. You consider this. What if the conditions are recursive? What if the trigger is the belief that you've figured it out? And right now, you believe you might have. Your heart races. You think, wait, no, I don't believe anything yet. I'm just speculating. But now you're speculating about belief. You're layering thought on thought. Reasoning about reasoning. You sit down. You stop thinking. You try to. You breathe. Slowly. carefully. And the box sits, and the room doesn't change. And yet, you don't feel safe. Because you realize the real bomb was never built to explode in the world outside. It was built to explode in the mind. Not to destroy matter, but to fracture certainty. To make you question the structure of your own thought so deeply that it never recovers. You haven't detonated the bomb. You've become it. The last question. There's a moment, just one, before the end. You're offered a final choice. Not a miracle, not salvation. Just a question. One, singular, cosmic, no context, no time left to prepare. The universe stands on the edge of its final breath, and all its energy folds into this. Ask your last question. You hesitate. Because this isn't just any question. This is the question. The last thing you'll ever ask, and the last thing the universe will ever answer. You feel the weight of it, heavier than stars, louder than silence. The possibilities race through your mind. Should you ask about love, about meaning, about time, about whether your life mattered, about what lies beyond? But instead, something darker slithers in, a thought too twisted to ignore. You hear yourself speak before you can stop. What is the question that will destroy everything? There's no sound, no explosion, no bright flash, just nothing. And then, the universe ends. No time to register it, no moment to regret, no correction. The question is answered not with words, but with action, or rather, with unaction, with deletion, with erasure. Reality folds inward, clean and complete, like a book closing itself. But the horror isn't in the end. It's in the implications. Because the question was a trap, a recursive sinkhole, a feedback loop too dense for space-time to support. The act of asking what could end everything creates a contradiction. The answer can't be known unless it happens. And once it happens, nothing remains to contain the answer. It's not even about the answer. It's about the structure. The moment that question exists, it creates a scenario where the only way to resolve it is with finality. The universe doesn't survive the logic of its own question. You didn't cause the end by wishing for it. You caused it by asking, by piercing into the forbidden zone of meta-reasoning where inquiry becomes action. You weren't given the power to destroy the universe. You were given the ability to ask the one question it couldn't survive. And the more you think about it, assuming there's still a you that can, the more you realize it was inevitable. All intelligent beings reach that final inquiry eventually. The question of endings, the question of collapse, the question so paradoxical that no system, no algorithm, no space-time equation can hold it. You didn't invent the end, you arrived at it. Because some questions aren't just unwise, they're uncontainable. And maybe that's the final truth. The universe didn't end because it ran out of energy, or because entropy won. It ended because you asked something it could not ignore. And that was enough. The infinite password. You're standing in front of a safe. There's no dial, no keypad, just a single slot, and one piece of paper. The instructions are simple. At least they appear that way. To unlock the safe, you must correctly guess the password. Beneath that, in bold, the password is a sentence. The sentence is, the password contains dakiyashas letters. That's it, one blank. You fill it in. If you get the number right, the safe opens. You smile at first, thinking it's a riddle, a trick. You're good at those. You start small. Let's try. The password contains 21 letters. You count. THE, 3. PASSWORD, 8. CONTAINS, 8. TWENTY, 6. ONE, 3. LETTERS, 7. Add the spaces. Number just letters. Total, 3 plus 8 plus 8 plus 6 plus 3 plus 7 equals 35. Not even close. Your sentence says it has 21 letters, but it has 35. Wrong. You try again. The password contains 35 letters. Wait, how many letters in that phrase? Count it. It's already more than 35 because 35 is 10 letters on its own. Now you're chasing your tail. You try 39. Still doesn't match. 41? Closer. You keep adjusting the number, each guess changing the total number of letters in the sentence, which changes the answer, which changes the sentence, which changes the answer again. You quickly realize you've fallen into a recursive loop. The moment you choose a number, you alter the sentence, which alters the count, which makes the number wrong. You're not solving a puzzle. You're chasing a moving target that shifts the moment you take aim. You try brute force. Write the sentence, count every letter, adjust the number, rewrite the sentence, count again. But every time you correct the number, it changes the total. You overshoot. You undershoot. It never lands. At first, you think there must be some correct number. One perfect solution. One magical integer that stabilizes the loop. But after your 50th attempt, you're not so sure. Maybe the solution isn't numerical. Maybe the trick is conceptual. You wonder, what if the sentence refers to itself completely? What if it's a self-contained linguistic equation that's trying to reconcile its own length with its own meaning? You try a different angle. Maybe the answer is 44. So you write, the password contains 44 letters. Now count the letters in that sentence. You realize 44 has 10 letters. But when you put it into the sentence, the total becomes 46. No good. You adjust to 46. Now the sentence reads, the password contains 46 letters. But that makes it 48. Again, wrong. You pause and feel it. That creeping sensation in the back of your mind. The quiet terror of self-reference. You're not solving a problem. You're stuck in a paradox. Every attempt is a new failure that contains the seed of its next failure. You stare at the safe, at the blank. You begin to doubt. What if there is no solution? What if the safe never opens? What if the act of seeking the correct number is the trap itself? Because now the puzzle isn't about numbers. It's about belief, about recursion, about whether it's even possible to align structure and content when each is shaped by the other. Maybe the correct answer is paradoxical. Maybe the correct answer is something like, this sentence has an incorrect number of letters. But that isn't what the prompt allows. It demands a specific number. You try 0. Absurd. But funny. The password contains 0 letters. That sentence has 30 letters. It's obviously wrong. But at least you're laughing. For now. You keep trying. 42, 31, 50, 62. The more you try, the more you notice the numbers begin to echo. You've circled back to the same guesses. You're stuck in a loop, not of logic, but of behavior. You're repeating attempts, hoping for a new outcome. And that's when the real punch lands. This wasn't a safe built to test your intelligence. It was built to test your persistence. It's not a code. It's a mirror. You're not cracking it. You're watching yourself crack under it. The safe sits still. The slot waits patiently. You hold the pen. You stare at the blank. You write. You count. You fail. And somewhere, between guesses, you realize you're not looking for a password anymore. You're looking for a way out of your own reasoning. The elevator problem. You're standing between two elevators. Identical shafts, identical buttons, identical silence. A sign overhead reads, one elevator always lies. One always tells the truth, but only when descending. There's no other instruction. Just that. No floor indicators. No up or down arrows. No sound of motion. They sit there, still and mute, waiting. You can't tell which one is going where. You don't even know if they've moved at all. You step back and try to map the logic. Let's start basic. Elevator A could be the liar. Elevator B could be the truth teller. but only when it's going down. Otherwise, it lies too. So it tells the truth, but conditionally. And the liar lies all the time. So now you're not just comparing honesty. You're comparing direction, which you can't see, because neither elevator admits which way it's moving. You press the call button. Both doors open. No clues. You step toward elevator A. There's a keypad inside. A glowing prompt. Ask a question. You type, "Are you going down?" It flashes back, "Yes." You don't know what to do with that. Because if A is the liar, it could be going up or down. It lies regardless. If it's the conditional truth teller, it only tells the truth if descending. So, yes could be true, or false. You're still blind. You ask elevator B, "Is A going down?" B replies, "No." But now the same logic breaks everything again. If B is the liar, that no could mean yes, or it could mean no. If B is the conditional truth teller, but ascending, it's lying now too. There's no solid ground. Every answer is wrapped in conditions and uncertainty. You pause and think, what if the real puzzle isn't about the elevators at all? What if it's about your expectations? You're trying to trap a binary truth from a system that isn't binary. Truth here isn't a constant. It's relative to motion. Truth shifts as the elevator moves, and because you can't see the direction, you can't decode the meaning. You ask another question. If I step inside, will I go down? Elevator A says, yes. Elevator B says, no. Again, nothing. Both responses are meaningless without knowing direction. The answers are shaped not by content, but by context. And the context is hidden. It's like interrogating a mirror about whether it's reflecting your real face or a version it created just to fool you. You wonder, what if the elevators don't move at all? What if that's the test? What if the whole trap is designed to make you paralyze yourself in indecision, forever trying to decode a system that gives you no footing? You consider stepping into one at random, but you hesitate. Because what if the wrong one takes you up? Or worse, what if both go up? What if the liar is stuck ascending and the truth teller is stuck lying? You start to feel the pressure of motionlessness, not from the elevators, from your own reasoning. You realize something deeper. Your need for certainty is the trap. You're trying to extract clear truth from layered uncertainty. You want the system to be clean, fair, solvable. But it isn't. It's built to twist your reasoning into knots, because the system doesn't reward logic. It rewards surrender. So you stop. You step back. You close your eyes. And you think, what if I just choose? Because maybe the elevator that lies and the one that tells the truth are the same. Maybe direction doesn't matter. Maybe the whole thing was a trick question. But then again, what if it wasn't? The anti-thought virus. It hits like a whisper, not a thunderclap. A sentence appears in your head, not something you chose, not something you remember reading or hearing. It simply shows up, uninvited, as if it always belonged there. Any decision you make now is the opposite of what you meant. You laugh, briefly, lightly, because it's ridiculous. A trick of language, a passing glitch. But then you try to do something simple. Stand up. And a sliver of doubt cuts through your action. Did you really want to stand? Or did the virus make you do the opposite of your intention? And now you're sitting when you meant to move. Wait, no, you did stand. So was that your real choice, or the reverse? The thought doesn't fade. It doesn't mutate. It just loops, stable and horrifying in its logic. Every decision you make is the opposite of what you meant. That's the infection. And now you can't unthink it. You try to test it. You decide to raise your left hand. Your left hand lifts. But was that what you meant? Or did you subconsciously want the right, and the virus reversed it? You try again. You decide to say nothing. You say nothing. So was your original intent to speak? And now the virus is suppressing it. You reverse engineer your own motivations and realize there's no objective checkpoint. There's no external reference. You are your own test subject, your own observer, and the data is poisoned. You decide to ignore the thought, but then you freeze, because ignoring it is also a decision. So if the virus is still active, and all decisions are flipped, then ignoring the thought means you're obeying it. You're infected more deeply. But then, if you decide to obey the thought, what does that mean? That every decision is the opposite? So obeying the idea that every decision is reversed should result in correct decisions? But now you're looping inside the virus's logic, trying to double negative your way out, trying to cheat the system by predicting how it breaks. You say, I'll flip a coin. Heads, I walk out the door. Tails, I sit down. You flip. It lands heads. You walk to the door. But suddenly, you don't trust the coin either. What if the virus anticipated your reliance on randomness? What if the decision to use a coin was the infected part, and the outcome doesn't matter? What if your brain chose the coin specifically because it would produce the opposite of what you intended? You look around. Nobody's in the room. No eyes watching. But the thought is watching. It sits in the back of your mind, like malware embedded in your OS. It doesn't need to do anything except exist. That's the genius of it. It doesn't have to control you. It just has to make you question whether you're controlling yourself. You try to act without deciding, move without thought, twitch your fingers randomly, walk without direction. But each time, the virus catches you. Was that truly reflex? Or did I choose that twitch? Was that step deliberate or infected? And now you're doubting your own heartbeat. The real horror isn't that your choices are reversed. The horror is that you no longer know what your actual intentions are. What does it even mean to mean something when meaning itself has been compromised? You consider inaction, absolute stillness. But then you realize, even choosing not to act is still a decision, still a place for the virus to attach. There's no outside the loop. There's no pure zone. Your mind is the petri dish, and the thought replicates without resistance. Eventually, you sit, not because you chose to, but because you're paralyzed by the impossibility of choosing. You wonder if the only way to win is to stop playing. But then, isn't that a strategy, a tactic, a decision? You close your eyes and breathe. You think, maybe I'll wait it out. But deep down, you know, you've already decided that. And the virus knows too. The perfectly random choice. You are handed a task, simple on the surface, impossible underneath. Make a perfectly random decision. That's it. That's the whole challenge. You're told it doesn't matter what the choice is, what to eat, which hand to raise, what word to speak. It just has to be random, uninfluenced, unpredictable, completely free from patterns, preferences, memories, or reasoning. You nod. You think, I can do this. And then, the moment you try, something shifts, because your mind, by its very nature, begins evaluating. Even before the choice is made, it starts lining up options. Is left more random than right? Is silence more random than speech? Have I done that before? Will I do it again? Your thoughts swirl. You try to suppress them. But the act of suppressing is itself a choice, a strategy. And you begin to realize you can't make a random choice on purpose. The very attempt introduces bias. Your intentions cast shadows onto the outcome. Even if you flip a coin, you chose the coin. You chose the sides. You chose to leave it up to chance. So you try to automate. You decide to say the first word that comes to mind. You blurt out, orange. But immediately, your brain starts tracing the roots. Did I see something orange today? Was I influenced by breakfast? By memory? By culture? You didn't pick a word randomly. You picked it from the soup of your experiences. And that soup is never neutral. You try to move, any movement, a twitch, a shrug. But you know your body too well. You know that micro-decisions are still decisions. Neurons firing with intent. Reflexes shaped by years of repetition. There is no gesture untainted by your conditioning. You try to think nothing. Clear the mind. Erase intent. Sit perfectly still and let the decision emerge from the void. But your brain doesn't do stillness. It does simulation. It runs internal scenarios even in silence. It pre-selects outcomes, weighs values, subconsciously leans toward one thing or another. And the more you try to suppress that system, the more active it becomes. You are a machine built to avoid randomness, to favor survival, familiarity, structure, and pattern. You realize something terrifying. You can't escape yourself. Even your effort to be random is just another deterministic function, a reaction to the demand to be non-reactive, a self-defeating command. You try using a number generator. You type in a script. Let the code decide. But the code is seeded. The seed was written by a human. The script was typed by you. The keyboard, the algorithm, the electricity. It all emerged from choices made by minds just like yours. Minds full of systems. Systems full of reasons. You didn't escape bias. You wrapped it in plastic and called it a gift. So you return to the core of it. Can a human being ever make a perfectly random decision? The answer begins to dawn on you, not as a word, but as a creeping sensation. Number, because randomness requires detachment. It requires a void of bias, of history, of instinct. But you are made of those things. Every cell in your body holds the imprint of cause and effect. You are born into patterns. Your language is patterned. Your emotions, your memory, your logic. You are a ripple in the stream of determinism. Even chaos in your hands is bent to shape. You think, what if I just stop trying? But even that is not random. It's the inverse of a strategy. It's avoidance, still rooted in intent. You sit in silence. And now you understand. The challenge wasn't to make a random choice. It was to realize that you can't. The looping number. You're handed a device. It's simple. One glowing red button and a digital screen that displays the number 1,000,000. A voice, calm, synthetic, detached, explains the rule. Each second, the number decreases by 1. When the counter reaches 0, it resets to 1,000,000. Your job is to observe it. That's it. Just observe. You nod. It sounds easy. It sounds like something you can manage. After all, how hard is it to watch a number go down? The seconds pass. The number ticks downward. 999,000, 999, 998, 997. You settle in. You wait. You count. A rhythm forms. 1 second per tick. A metronome of digital decay. There's a certain peace to it at first. Predictable, reliable. You even calculate the total time. 1,000,000 seconds. About 11.5 days. Just over a week and a half of waiting. Then it'll hit 0. Then it'll finish. But when you finally reach 0, something breaks. Not in the device. In your mind. Because as soon as the counter hits 0, there's no fanfare. No announcement. No result. The screen just flashes and resets to 1,000,000. You blink. No glitch. No malfunction. The device was honest. The instructions were clear. It never ends. It just loops. You think, I'll wait again. Maybe the second time something will happen. Another week and a half passes. The digits fall, predictably, painfully. You count them again. You hope something's different. But again, it reaches 0 and restarts. You're trapped in the loop. A countdown that doesn't count down. A finality that regenerates itself the moment it's supposed to conclude. And here's where it begins to claw at your thoughts. Because it's not just the repetition. It's what it means. If every attempt to reach the end results in a reset, did you ever actually begin? You rewind the logic in your head. If the counter resets when it reaches 0, then it never truly finishes. And if it never finishes, can you say you ever made progress? Or have you just been running in a perfect circle, convinced you were heading forward? You remember something, a concept from math or philosophy, about loops that contain their own origin, about systems that are self-perpetuating because they embed their restart in their conclusion. This counter doesn't just refuse to end. It refuses to acknowledge that the beginning or end ever existed. And now the thought really sets in. What if this is your life? What if the task wasn't to observe the countdown, but to see if you would notice the loop? What if you've been doing this not for 2 weeks, but forever? What if every time you reach the final moment, the moment you expect something to happen, you blink and find yourself back at the beginning, holding a device you've already seen, following instructions you've already followed, counting down a number that was never meant to end? And the more you try to mark the time, the fuzzier it becomes. Were you on your 3rd cycle? 5th? 50th? The numbers all blur together. The rhythm lulls your mind into forgetting which digit came next. You start to count without even seeing the screen. And then you ask yourself the question that unravels it all. If I've been in this loop forever, what was I doing before it started? And the silence answers you. Because you can't remember anything else. No before, no origin, just countdowns, just resets, just this moment, endlessly cycling, endlessly feeding the illusion that you're almost done. And now you're no longer observing the loop. You are the loop. The Time Splitter's Curse. You've heard the theory 1,000 times. Every decision splits the timeline. Every choice you make sends the universe branching in two. One where you said yes, one where you said no. One where you stayed, one where you left. One where you smiled, one where you didn't. Infinite possibilities. Infinite versions of you. It always sounded empowering. Like you were a god of choices, creating reality with every flick of indecision. But then, you learn the part no one talks about. You discover it in a dream, or a vision, or maybe it was whispered by an alternate self you met in the hallway between dreams. You don't remember how. All you know is the message. Every version of you regrets the decision they made. You stop breathing. Because it can't be true. It shouldn't be. You try to disprove it in your mind. You pick a memory, a choice, something you were sure of. You imagine the version of you who chose differently. But instead of peace, you see it, regret in their eyes. Not because they did something worse, but because they didn't do your thing. They lived your what if, and it hurt them the same way your present choice hurts you. You imagine hundreds of you, thousands, billions, all living lives built from alternate moments, split by microscopic differences. Some are rich, some are poor, some are dead, some are lost, some are famous, some are alone. But the one thread that binds them all? Regret. It doesn't matter what the choice was. The pain is always the same. And now you feel it. The curse. The sickening realization that regret isn't a symptom of bad decisions. It's a shadow that clings to choice itself. The moment you pick one thing, you destroy every other thing. And in the echo of that destruction, something mourns. Not because the other options were better, but because they were possible. And now they're not. You try to escape it. Maybe you can make a perfect choice, one that you won't regret. But the curse doesn't allow that. Because the moment you believe a choice is perfect, another version of you splits off who isn't so sure. One who sees the cracks, who doubts, who wonders, what if I hadn't chosen this? And suddenly, the spiral grows. For every decision made, there is another you who wishes they didn't. And another, and another. infinite selves, all haunted by the same ghost. Not failure, not fear, but longing. The longing for the road not taken. You realize something else, something darker. The curse doesn't just apply to the big decisions. It applies to the tiniest ones. What to eat, what to wear, whether to smile back, whether to check your phone, whether to blink. Each moment is a fracture. Each fracture births another you, and each you carries the burden of wondering if they broke the world just slightly wrong. You stop moving. You stop breathing. You try to stop choosing. You try to pause. But that's a choice too. And somewhere, another version of you made the opposite decision. You try to imagine a version of yourself who feels peace, who is satisfied, who made the right choice. But you can't find them. Because they don't exist. Because regret isn't about what you did. It's about what you can't undo. And now you see the final horror. Every time you decide, you sentence another version of yourself to sorrow. And every time you hesitate, you sentence yourself. So now you sit in the center of a branching tree of infinities, paralyzed by the knowledge that choice creates regret, and inaction creates more of it. You want to stop the branching. But there's only one way to stop choosing. And even that decision splits the timeline again. The empty rulebook. You're handed a thin black book. No title, no author, no index. Just 2 lines printed on a single page. The person giving it to you says, "You must follow this rulebook at all times." You nod. You open it. You read. It says, Rule 1, obey all rules. Rule 2, Rule 2 does not exist. That's it. Nothing else. Just those 2 lines. You flip the page. Nothing. You check the cover. Blank. You hold it up to the light. No invisible ink. No fine print. No additional rules. Just that strange loop of logic printed in stark black font, like a dare disguised as an instruction. Rule 1 is clear. Obey all rules. That makes sense. A bit authoritarian, but understandable. But then you get to Rule 2, and the entire structure collapses. Rule 2. Rule 2 does not exist. Wait, does not exist. Wait. What? You read it again. Slower. Rule 2 says it doesn't exist. So if that's true, if Rule 2 truly doesn't exist, then it shouldn't be there. But it is. It's printed right in front of you. So is that a contradiction? Or is it some kind of weird meta joke? A rule that cancels itself? If Rule 2 doesn't exist, then you're free to ignore it. But if you ignore it, you're still obeying Rule 1, which says to obey all rules. And Rule 2 is a rule, isn't it? You start to spiral. If Rule 2 doesn't exist, and yet it's in the book, is the book lying? Or is the book simply reflecting a deeper truth? That rules can exist in theory, but not in substance. But if Rule 2 doesn't exist, then why is it named Rule 2? And if you're following Rule 1, which requires you to obey all rules, do you have to pretend Rule 2 does exist, just to obey the command that says it doesn't? Your mind fractures like glass under pressure. You realize you're being forced into a logical chokehold. Rule 1 binds you to every rule. Rule 2 tells you it doesn't exist. But it does. And the moment you notice that, you start breaking the rules just by thinking about them. And now you're not even sure what obedience means. Is asking questions a form of disobedience? Are you violating Rule 1 by trying to understand Rule 2? You close the book, try to walk away, but you can't unsee the loop. You wonder, if Rule 2 doesn't exist, can it still affect you? Like a black hole, something invisible but warping everything around it. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the rule is a virus disguised as a void. Maybe the moment you read it, it embedded itself into your logic. A kind of philosophical malware that sits in the corner of your cognition, rerouting everything through paradox. And the worst part? You don't know if you're obeying anymore. Because to obey Rule 2 is to acknowledge its non-existence. But to acknowledge its non-existence is to obey it. But obeying it affirms it exists. Which breaks it? Which obeys it? Which? You get it. You're already trapped. So now you hold the rule book and you follow it. Not because you understand it, but because you can't figure out how not to. And the real question, the one that burrows deeper than all the others, is this. Are you following Rule 2 right now? Or are you breaking it by asking? The mind eraser coin. It's just a coin. That's what they tell you. A regular metal disc with two sides, heads and tails. But the game isn't regular. The rules are simple and terrifying. You flip the coin. If it lands on heads, you win $1 million. If it lands on tails, you lose all memory of ever flipping it. Everything. Gone. The event erased like it never happened. You're told this with a straight face. The coin is already in your hand. You feel its weight. You run your thumb over its edge. You ask, what if I lose? But the dealer just shrugs. If you do, you'll never know. And that's the trap. Because the deal is elegant in its cruelty. You're offered a shot at untraceable failure. A decision that cannot punish you. At least, not in a way you'll ever be aware of. You think about flipping. You hesitate. But then, you realize something strange. You remember winning. You remember holding the coin, flipping it, landing heads. You remember the rush, the disbelief, the payout. You remember the moment with crystal clarity. You remember walking away rich. But that memory is the problem. Because if you had flipped tails, you'd remember nothing. So any memory of the coin flip must come from a win. That means, no matter how many times you flip, you only remember the heads. You only remember the success, the triumph, the luck. And now, you don't know how many times you've actually flipped. Once? 10? 100? You might have flipped tails 99 times. But each time, your memory reset. Gone. Obliterated. You only carry forward the times you won. Which means, you can't trust your memory. Every time you flip, you reboot. Every win is surrounded by an unknowable number of failures. You could be the unluckiest person alive, continuously chasing a win through endless amnesia, until one lucky moment lands heads. And that's the version you get to keep. So now you ask yourself, am I rich because I'm lucky, or because I've lost 1,000 times? And now the room feels colder. Because you realize something deeper, something darker. The coin doesn't erase just the flip. It erases the doubt. You remember winning, so you believe you made the right choice. You remember the thrill, so you assume the game was fair. But the system is designed to reinforce itself. Every loser forgets. Every winner becomes an advocate. You think, of course I'd flip again. It worked last time. But maybe the person thinking that isn't the one who lost before. Maybe you're just the survivor of your own failed selves. And if that's true, how many other decisions in your life have been rewired this way? How many good outcomes are the result of selective memory? How many regrets have been buried because you didn't remember making the wrong choice? You hold the coin again. Your fingers tremble. You think, maybe I've already flipped. Maybe this is the aftermath of a tale. Maybe this is the lie. Because if the coin erased your memory of losing, maybe it erased the memory of winning too. Maybe it reset everything. And now you're flipping, again, and again, and again. Always thinking it's the first time. Always thinking you've never lost. Because the coin doesn't just erase the memory. It erases your capacity to doubt it ever happened. And that's how it wins. The countdown that never ends. The voice is absolute. It echoes not from above or below, but from everywhere at once. Inside your bones, behind your thoughts. The world will end in 10 seconds. You don't question it. You don't challenge it. It's not the kind of voice you can argue with. You freeze. Everyone freezes. The clock begins ticking. Patavdı. Everything slows. Every second feels stretched like elastic. You watch the air shift. You hear your heartbeat. You feel the weight of every moment. Divyati. You think of the people you love, of unfinished projects, of what you never got around to saying. Irtavdı. The buildings around you hold their breath. The sky grows heavy. The birds stop mid-flight. Time becomes fragile. Yeram. You try to find peace in the inevitability. The world has an ending. All stories do. At least you know how yours will go. Aravdı. You brace. You count. You accept. Aindavdı. You wonder what it will feel like. The actual end. A bright flash? Silence? A collapse inward? Nangavdı. You hold your breath. You whisper goodbye. Mundram. You close your eyes. Dusra. You wait. First, and then it happens. Nothing. No collapse, no explosion. Just a new voice, calm, dispassionate, and mechanical. 10 seconds remaining. A chill runs through you. You open your eyes. Everyone's still here. The world still stands. But the countdown has restarted. Deseti deveti osmi. It continues like before. Identical, but wrong. Because now you know this isn't the end. At least, not yet. It happens again. First, pause. 10 seconds remaining. A reset. Perfect. Clean. Unapologetic. As if the universe is stuck on the edge of a sentence it refuses to finish. You try to speak, to scream, to move. Anything. But something deep in the mechanics of time holds you in place. You are trapped in the final breath of everything. Endlessly inhaled, never exhaled. You try to time it. Maybe the delay is just a glitch, a hiccup. But no, it's precise. Every reset is the same. At 1 second, the clock restarts. Not zero, never zero. You will never see the end. And now the voice is just part of you. A metronome fused into the rhythm of your brain. 10 seconds remaining. You start to ask questions. Is someone doing this? Did someone program this reset? And if they did, why? Mercy, punishment. Maybe this is heaven for the anxious, perpetual warning, never consequence. Or maybe it's hell, the promise of closure, denied forever. You try to move. You try to look around. Others are stuck in the loop too. Some are praying. Some are laughing. Some are crying. All of them living in 10-second cycles, desperately trying to squeeze meaning into time that never fulfills its purpose. You notice something else. You start aging, slowly, imperceptibly. But it's happening. The seconds may reset, but you don't. The countdown loops, but the body does not. 10 seconds becomes 10 days, becomes 10 years. You are aging at the edge of existence. You ask yourself the obvious. Is this better than the end? Because technically, you're still alive. The world hasn't ended. Time still moves. You still think. You still feel. But there is no future. No past. Just 10 seconds, endlessly layered over the last. Eventually, you stop fearing the end. You want it. You crave zero. You start praying for the explosion, for silence, for the black void that would mean it's finally over. But it never comes. Only one. Only the reset. You've lived 1,000 years inside the last 10 seconds of the universe. And all you've learned is this. There are worse things than endings. Like the countdown that never ends. The reverse dreamer. You used to know the difference. You could feel it like gravity. Awake was solid, real, predictable. Dreams were messy, unstable, filled with symbols and shifting logic. But now the line is gone, blurred into a fog that never lifts. Every night you fall asleep and wake up, in the dream, fully conscious, fully grounded. You walk through your dream world with memory, awareness, clarity. You look around, and everything is crisp. The air feels real. The colors are vivid. The people speak with intent. You even dream about waking up. But you never do. And then, in the morning, you open your eyes. But you don't feel awake. Not truly. The world you open into feels thinner, duller. Everything is just slightly off. The colors are muted. The air feels heavy. People talk to you, but their words don't stick. You move through the day like it's made of paper. You eat, but nothing satisfies. You laugh, but it sounds like someone else's voice. You begin to ask yourself, am I dreaming now? But nobody answers. Because they can't. Because maybe they're dreaming too. Each night, you return to the other world, the dream world. But it doesn't feel like a dream. You live full lives in it. You make decisions. You feel love. You experience loss. Time passes there. You fall asleep in the dream and wake up again. Here, in the real world. But it's no longer clear which one is which. You test the limits. You pinch yourself. No difference. You read text. Look away. Read it again. It stays the same. You try to fly. You don't. You try to die. You don't. The dream is stable. More stable than your waking hours. More coherent. More grounded. You begin to prefer it. You long for sleep, not to escape reality, but to return to it. Eventually, you stop calling it a dream at all. It becomes your real life. And the waking world becomes the hallucination. You sleep to live. You wake to drift. And then it gets stranger. Because in the dream, people begin to mention it, the reversal. They speak in hushed tones, referring to this waking world as the gray layer, a place some get trapped in, a side effect of overthinking, overfeeling, overstretching the boundaries of awareness. You meet others there, other dreamers who know it too, people who say they've been stuck here for years, trapped in the dream of waking up. And they ask you the question you've been avoiding. Which version of you is the dreamer? And suddenly, you don't know. Because both feel real. Both have consequences. Both remember. Both suffer. You consider the possibility. What if there's no real or dream anymore? What if consciousness is just bouncing between two simulations, neither of which is the original? What if you lost the real world years ago? And now all that's left is this recursive loop of false awakenings. You close your eyes. You open them. You're still here. You dream again. You wake again. The loop continues. And now you no longer ask, which world is real? You ask, which version of me is pretending not to know? The missing axiom. You're handed a map of everything: logic, truth, reality, meaning. It's neat, unbroken, clean, a flawless system, a structure where every answer flows from the right question. Every contradiction has been weeded out. Every conclusion follows precisely, obediently, like dominoes placed by a divine hand. You're told this is the perfect logical system. Every truth you need can be built from it. Every question has a path to clarity. You study the foundations. Every part of it rests on a set of axioms, basic assumptions taken as self-evident. They are not proven. They are simply accepted, and from them, everything else is derived. One axiom says, a thing is either true or false. Another says, equal things can substitute for each other. Another, less obvious, simply whispers through the system, holding threads together, quiet and unquestioned. And then you find it. One axiom, just one, hidden among the others, but not quite like them. It doesn't ring right. You test it. You run it through hypotheticals, through corner cases. You ask it questions it shouldn't be able to answer, and it fails. You realize it's false. Not subjectively, not contextually, objectively false. But somehow, the system needs it. When you remove it, even carefully, the whole thing falls apart. It's like a keystone, a lie that supports a palace of truths. You want to fix it. You want to find a better axiom, something cleaner, more honest. But every variation leads to collapse. You try replacing it with a different assumption. Nothing works. The elegant machinery of the system jams, sputters, and dies. Without the lie, truth becomes impossible to reach. You try to build a new system without the false axiom. The math stops adding up. The logic no longer binds. The conclusions contradict each other. You're left with fragments, true fragments maybe, but disjointed, isolated. They don't build into anything. You're holding puzzle pieces with no picture. Now you're staring at two choices. Keep the lie, or lose the structure. Preserve the illusion, or embrace a shattered truth. But something strange happens the longer you think. You begin to wonder whether the axiom is even a lie. After all, it worked. The system functioned. It produced truth. Isn't that what matters? Maybe the false axiom was just a shortcut, a necessary fiction, a framework that holds, not because it's true, but because it lets truth exist within it. Maybe truth is less about foundations and more about coherence. But that's the trap. Because now you've started redefining truth. Now you've started justifying falsehoods because of what they allow. Now you're no longer interested in what's correct. You're addicted to what works. And this isn't just a problem of logic anymore. This is personal. You think about all the axioms in your own life. I am a good person. I deserve happiness. Everything happens for a reason. Are those true? Or are they simply the lies your mind uses to keep itself from collapsing? What if everyone walks around with one false axiom in their head? Just one. Just enough to keep the rest of the system standing. And then the question changes. It's no longer, how do I remove the lie? It becomes, can I live without it? What would happen if you ripped it out, completely? If you acknowledged, without cushioning, that this one idea was never true, never will be, and yet you've built everything else around it. Could you survive that? Could you rebuild from zero? The silence you feel when you ask that isn't peaceful. It's gravitational. It pulls at you, drags you downward, into the heart of something terrifying. The realization that truth might be a side effect of lies that cooperate. So now you stare at the broken system. And then you do the unthinkable. You put the axiom back. You reinsert the lie. The gears grind. The system hums. The equations flow again. The conclusions work. It all returns to order. And you breathe. Not because it's right, but because it runs. The binary mirror. It wasn't supposed to be special. Just a curiosity. A weird relic. They called it the binary mirror. A pane of mirrored glass in a dusty museum hall, marked only with a bronze plaque that read, "It reflects not appearance, but decision." The first time you stand in front of it, you notice something's off. It doesn't mimic you like a normal mirror. It moves with intent, but not precision. When you lift your left hand, it lifts its right. That's expected. When you frown, it smiles. Odd, but maybe part of the gimmick. But then, you start testing it. You reach slowly, deliberately, and the mirror seems to, wait, watch. It doesn't follow you. It mirrors your choice, not your motion. It reflects your decision, your will, not the mechanics. The mirror isn't interested in your image. It's watching your agency. At first, it's fascinating. A piece of playful weirdness. A glitch in physics you can poke at. But then, something happens. One day, you walk past it distracted. You don't think. You don't plan. But as you pass, the mirror moves first. It raises your hand before you do. You feel it. A twitch, an urge, a motion that isn't yours. And yet, it happens. You raise your hand because the mirror told you to. Or maybe it showed what you would do. Or maybe it made you. Now, you don't know which came first, your action or its reflection. And the more you test it, the more confused you become. You lift your foot. The mirror moves half a second before you do. You turn left. It turns before you even shift weight. The delay is consistent. Not lag, but lead. The mirror is ahead of you, predicting you. No, worse, it's prompting you. Because now you realize you're hesitating. You're waiting to see what the mirror will do before you act. You start to copy it. You don't choose. You comply. And that's when the bottom drops out. You wonder if you've ever been choosing. What if the mirror has always been leading? What if it has always been the first mover, and you just believed you were? You think back on your life, your habits, your impulses. What if those weren't yours? What if the mirror was always there, invisible, guiding every twitch and turn? You try to break the pattern. You decide to move unpredictably, to do something random. You flail, you twitch, you blink out of rhythm, and yet, the mirror still leads. Like it's not responding to your movement, but to your core, to your decision process, to something you didn't even know was visible. You start to feel paranoid. You stop trusting your own reflection, not just in the mirror, but in any mirror, in water, in windows. You avoid your reflection because you're not sure anymore if it's showing you or telling you. Then one night, you dream about the mirror. But this time, you're on the inside. You're the reflection, waiting for the human to move. But they don't. They stare at you, motionless. And you panic, because you don't know what to do without their input. But then, a new thought creeps in. What if they've always been waiting on me? And in the dream, you lift your hand. They copy. You smile. They smile back. And it hits you. You were never the copy. You were always the source. And when you wake up, standing in front of the real mirror, you feel something horrifyingly familiar. Movement in your limbs you didn't initiate. A smile you didn't feel. A thought you didn't choose. The mirror didn't switch roles. You just finally saw it clearly. And the only question left is, if it stops moving one day, will you? The prisoner's loop. There are two of them. No names, no crimes. Just two figures sitting across from each other in identical, white, windowless cells, separated by a wall too thin to be solid, too thick to see through. Each of them is given a single instruction. One of you will be released, but only if the other guesses that it is you. That's it. No context, no further information. One will go free, but only if the other predicts their freedom. It's a trap made of pure thought. There's no luck involved, no physical keys, just logic, just belief. So they begin to think. Prisoner. A stares at the blank wall, running the rules again and again. I will be released if B guesses that I will be released, which means B has to believe that A will go free. But if B believes that, and guesses it, then A walks out. So A reasons. If I want to be free, I must convince myself that B thinks I will be. But A has no contact with B, no voice, no signal, just silence. So how do you influence another mind with no communication? How do you insert a belief into someone else's logic? Meanwhile, B is thinking the same thing. I will be released if A guesses that I will be released. B thinks, okay, then A has to believe that I'm the one getting out. But A doesn't know what I'm thinking. A has no idea what I'll guess. And suddenly, B's mind circles the drain. Should I guess A will be freed? If I do, and A guesses the same about me, then both of us guessed correctly. We each predicted the other's freedom. That should work, right? And that's where it begins to fracture. Because now, both prisoners have reasoned their way into the same solution. Each one believes, if I guess that the other is going free, and they guess the same about me, We'll both be correct. We'll fulfill the rule. And that's what they do. They submit their guesses. Each one predicts the other's release. And the doors don't open. The locks stay firm. The lights remain cold. Because here's the hidden clause, the silent razor behind the rule. Only one will be released. Not both. Not zero. One. And the condition is not that each guesses the other, just that the one who will be released must be the one the other predicts will go free. And now they're stuck in a loop. Both guessed the other would be released, which means each prisoner fulfilled the requirement for the other. So both guesses were technically correct. But the system can't release both. And it won't pick randomly. So it picks no one. Because the rule wasn't about creating shared belief. It was about isolating belief to determine one outcome. The loop short-circuited the system. And now, both prisoners are punished for being logically correct at the same time. Because the system wasn't built for mutual understanding. It was built for asymmetry. For one mind to guess truthfully and one to be guessed about. It wasn't made for harmony. It was made to force a difference. But they aligned. And that alignment, ironically, created failure. So now they sit there. Technically correct, but functionally trapped. And the longer they sit, the more they begin to doubt. Did I guess wrong? Did I ruin the other's chance? Did they ruin mine? Was this even a test of logic? Or a trap to reveal how cooperation, even perfect cooperation, can break the machine? And they'll never know. Because the rule said, one of you will be released only if the other guesses it. And now, no one goes free. Because both of them believed in each other. The speaker's paradox. He stands on a stage made of thought. No microphone, no spotlight. Just an audience of minds waiting to be caught. He doesn't introduce himself. Doesn't explain the rules. He just opens his mouth and speaks. Everything I say is false. That's it. No flair, no emphasis. Just a flat statement dropped like a match into a room full of gas. And the fire begins. You think, okay, if that sentence is true, if everything he says is false, then that sentence must be false. But if it's false, then not everything he says is false, which means at least some of what he says is true. But that includes the sentence, everything I say is false, which would then be true, which means it's false, which means it's true, which means you get it. You're already stuck. You try to escape by logic. You break the sentence down. You rephrase it. Let's suppose he says only one sentence. Then either it's true or it's false. If it's true, it declares itself false. So contradiction. If it's false, then not all he says is false. So it's true. Again, contradiction. Then he speaks again. He says, this sentence is true. You freeze. Because this one should be easier. If the sentence is true, then it's true. Simple. Self-affirming. But now you're not so sure. Because the context has changed. The speaker already poisoned the well. He's already set up a system where statements eat themselves. So now this new sentence, this sentence is true, is no longer a flat declaration. It's a trap too. Maybe it's false, and falsely claims it's true. But if that's the case, it contradicts itself, which makes it paradoxical. You stare at him. You realize he's done something worse than lie. He's broken the currency of speech. He's destroyed trust in language itself. Because if you can't believe a sentence when it claims to be false, or when it claims to be true, then what are you left with? He didn't say anything magical. He just unzipped the seams of logic and let everything inside collapse. Now you're asking yourself, which do I believe? But belief is irrelevant here. Neither sentence is asking for belief. They're asking for coherence, and not providing any. They are feedback loops disguised as statements. Mobius strips made of grammar. And the real trick, they're not even about the sentences. They're about you. About how your mind tries to hold on to meaning, even when meaning pulls its own floor out from under it. About how your brain still tries to resolve the contradiction instead of walking away. You're addicted to the idea that every statement must be either true or false. But what if that's not how reality works? What if some statements are unclassifiable? What if some thoughts are structured to loop, not to land? You realize now, he didn't create the paradox. You did! The moment you tried to assign truth to the sentence, you stepped into the trap. He just built it. You walked in. And as the speaker says nothing else, as he watches the room ripple with confusion and recursive thoughts, you understand something unsettling. You never needed to believe him. You only needed to hear him. And now you can't stop. Because the loop doesn't need to be repeated to keep spinning. It just needs a mind that refuses to let go. The memory glitch. It's a fact you're absolutely certain of. A memory so sharp, so bright, so clear it cuts through everything else like a knife through fog. The fact is this: you've always had amnesia. That's the thought, the memory, the belief. A constant echo in your mind like a scratched record. You've always had amnesia. Not recently. Not following some trauma. Not after an event. No, always. Since the beginning. It's part of who you are. But then you stop. Because the moment you truly look at that sentence, everything breaks. How can you remember that you've always had amnesia? How can that knowledge even exist? Amnesia, by definition, is the loss of memory. And if it's something you've always had, then that includes the moment of acquiring that fact. Which means you shouldn't know it. It shouldn't be there. You shouldn't be able to recall it. But you do. And that's when the loop begins. You think, maybe I'm remembering being told that I have amnesia. That would make sense. Someone told you once, and that moment stuck. But even that explanation collapses. Because if you have always had amnesia, then you wouldn't remember being told. That memory would be gone. And yet here you are, staring at this sentence inside your head, like it's carved into the stone of your identity. You try to backtrack, try to test other memories, your birthday, your childhood, your first love, your first heartbreak. Everything is fuzzy, mismatched, half there. You can't tell if those memories are real or patched in by some internal algorithm desperate to fill the void. It's like your mind is building a life story out of recycled images and assumptions. Every scene could be fiction. Every face could be a mask. And yet the sentence persists. You've always had amnesia. That shouldn't be possible. You shouldn't be able to remember that. But you do. You try to look at it like a math problem. If A is, I have amnesia, and B is, I know I have amnesia, then A and B cannot coexist in the traditional sense. If A is true, B can't be. If B is true, then A is false. And yet you're holding both at the same time. You're Schrödinger's memory, a person who simultaneously knows and does not know. You reach for outside confirmation, photos, journals, recordings. But even those feel compromised. If you wrote them when you didn't remember, then how reliable are they? If you filmed yourself saying, you've always had amnesia, how can you trust the version of you who recorded it? If that version believed the same glitch you're experiencing now, then maybe they were wrong too. Or maybe they were just a symptom. Another recursive layer in the same broken stack. Eventually, you begin to suspect that the sentence isn't a memory at all. Maybe it's not even a thought. Maybe it's a virus, a linguistic glitch, a phrase engineered to corrupt your logic circuits, like a sentence made of static. Maybe the sentence isn't supposed to be understood. It's supposed to jam your system. It's like saying, this sentence is a lie, but worse, because instead of tricking you with logic, it tricks you with selfhood. You've always had amnesia. You say it again, but this time it tastes different. You begin to realize something horrific. Maybe this sentence didn't appear in your memory. Maybe it is your memory, the only one left. The last functioning thought left in a mind that's been reset over and over. Maybe you never had other memories. Maybe this is the original error. A line of corrupted code so deep in your psyche that every reboot starts with it. You try to discard it. You try to let it go. You tell yourself it doesn't make sense, that it's impossible, that it's nonsense. But even that is a form of remembering. Even that is acknowledging its existence. Every attempt to disprove it proves it. Every denial is just another data point feeding the loop. And so you sit there, holding on to one perfect contradiction, a vivid memory that proves you can't have vivid memories. And no matter how many times you try to escape it, it follows you. Because maybe that's all you are now. Not a person, not a mind. Just a glitch that remembers forgetting. The Soundless Command. It doesn't come as a voice. Not exactly. It's more like a shape. A command without a sound. A sentence that skips your ears and lands directly in your brain like a stone thrown into still water. It drops, and the ripples start immediately. You don't know where it came from, or how long it's been there. You only know the shape of it, the feel of it, the meaning. Do not obey this voice. That's all it says. No context, no threat, no tone. Just that single paradox wrapped in the skin of a command. And for a moment, you do nothing. You freeze. Because you don't know what doing nothing means anymore. You think, if I follow the command, I'm not obeying it. But if I don't follow it, I'm still obeying it by disobeying. Your brain folds inward. You replay the sentence. Slower. Do not obey this voice. You realize it's a trap. But not just any trap. A perfect logic trap. The kind that doesn't need enforcement. It doesn't need you to believe it. It just needs to be heard. The moment you register it, you're caught. You decide to stop thinking about it. But that's a choice. A response. A reaction to the command. Is that disobedience or obedience? You try to resist it. You try to tell yourself it's meaningless. But the more you push back, the more deeply you engage with it. You can't escape the loop, because every possible reaction feeds the loop. Even inaction is action. Even silence is compliance. You try to invert it. Maybe the key is to do the opposite of what the voice says. But that's what it wants, isn't it? The voice tells you not to obey. So if you obey, you're disobeying. But if you disobey, you're obeying. You reach the center of the spiral. The only true way to not obey is to not exist in relation to the voice at all. To somehow unhear it, unthink it, erase it. But you can't. It's already in. It's not sound. It's not words. It's structure. It's a virus made of syntax, designed to bend logic back into itself. It's linguistic origami, folding obedience into disobedience and back again, until the distinction is meaningless. You think, what if I give it nothing? No action, no movement, no decision. But even that is something. Even that is a form of doing. And that's when you feel the shift. You're no longer trying to escape the command. You're trying to resolve it. You've turned it into a problem to solve. A puzzle. A riddle. But that, too, is obedience. The voice doesn't care if you follow it or reject it. It only needs you to engage. And now you understand the final horror. The command was never about control. It was about attention. It was about planting itself so deeply in your mind that every thought leads back to it. Do not obey this voice. And now it owns you. Not because you followed, not because you didn't, but because you listened. The silent apocalypse. The rule is never written down, never broadcast, never spoken aloud. But somehow you know it. It's burned into the back of your mind, like a memory you didn't earn. The world only ends if no one knows its ending. That's it. That's the condition. That's the law behind all laws. The apocalypse has a failsafe. Not physical, not technological, but conceptual. As long as someone is aware of the end, it pauses, delays, stalls. It waits for silence, for ignorance, for forgetfulness. It waits for the moment when no conscious mind is watching. And now, you realize it. You look up from your coffee, or out your window, or through the cracks in your reality. And you feel it like gravity. Something is ending. Something massive. Maybe not today. Maybe not all at once. But it's happening. Quietly, systematically. The sun is just a little too dim. The air feels thinner. People seem less present. You can't quite explain it, but it's there. The unraveling, the decay, the slow death of everything. But you know. And because you know, it stops. Or at least, it pauses. You've created an anchor, a single node of awareness suspending the end in limbo. The apocalypse was arriving in secret, slipping in through the cracks, but your realization has halted its progress. At least for now. You try to tell someone. You try to explain. But the words don't land. They nod. They smile. They say, "Yeah, it feels weird lately." But they don't see it. Not the way you do. Their awareness isn't sharp enough. Their understanding isn't complete. And you start to worry. Am I the only one? Because if you are, then the fate of the world, its very survival, is tied to your ability to keep knowing, to keep remembering, to stay aware. And that's when the true weight of the paradox sets in. Awareness is the safeguard. But awareness can fade. You get tired, distracted. You dream. You sleep. You zone out. You try to remember the name of your fourth-grade teacher. You wonder where your keys are. And in those moments, are you still aware of the end? If you forget for even a second, is that the second? You start setting reminders, notes on your phone, messages to yourself. The world ends if you forget. But even then, you worry. What if reading the note doesn't count? What if awareness must be active, conscious? What if passive memory isn't enough? And then something worse creeps in. What if someone else knew before you did and forgot? What if the end already started and you're just holding it back with the dim glow of your fragile realization? And when you die, or doze off, or go numb, it continues. Now you start monitoring your thoughts like a prison warden. You tie strings around your fingers. You whisper the rule under your breath like a prayer. But your mind is slippery. It drifts. It dreams. And you begin to fear sleep like it's a death sentence. Not because it kills your body, but because it might kill your vigilance. Because the end isn't loud. It doesn't come with fire, or blood, or thunder. It comes with forgetting. It comes with the moment no one's looking. And now you see the world for what it is, a fragile structure suspended above an abyss, held in place not by strength or gods or machines, but by noticing, by the invisible thread of attention. And that thread is fraying. Because one day, you will forget. Everyone does. And the end doesn't need much. Just 1 second of silence. Just one blink. Just one moment when nobody knows it's happening. And then, everything, quietly, stops. The conditional immortality. The deal is simple. You are immortal, as long as you believe you are. That's it. No magic, no gods, no rituals, just belief. As long as the thought, "I cannot die," lives inside you with absolute conviction, you will not age, will not decay, will not fade. The moment you stop believing, the moment doubt seeps in, the condition dissolves, and so do you. At first, it's thrilling. You believe completely, with fire, with certainty. You wake each day with the force of that thought pulsing through you like a second heartbeat. I am immortal. You walk through danger. You heal from wounds. You see others grow old while you remain untouched. You've proven it. It's real. It works. But then, the thought changes. It doesn't vanish. It just flickers. It softens from, I am immortal, to, what if I am? To, how can I be sure? You catch yourself rereading old notes, repeating affirmations longer, watching your reflection more closely. Because now you're not believing. You're trying to believe. You're rehearsing the idea, polishing it, reinforcing it like a shaky bridge. And that's when you realize the truth. You no longer believe. You want to believe. And that's not the same. But here's the catch. You're still alive, still untouched, still seemingly immortal. So you ask yourself, did I lose the belief already? If the immortality hinges on belief, and your belief has already faded, why are you still here? Unless the transition isn't instant. Unless the effect lags behind the thought. Unless the moment you stop believing starts a clock, and the countdown is invisible. You spiral. Because now you can't know the status of your own belief. You can't trust your mind to measure its own certainty. Belief isn't binary. It's layered. You can say, I believe, and still carry a sliver of doubt buried in your subconscious. So what counts? Does only perfect belief sustain you? Or can belief exist in fragments, in echoes, in willful repetition? You try to fix it. You meditate. You scream affirmations into mirrors. You write it in blood. You brand it into your skin. But now, everything feels desperate, forced, hollow. The more you try to prove your belief, the less real it becomes. And that's the curse. Immortality based on belief is a trap that feeds on introspection. The more you question it, the less you can believe. The less you believe, the more urgent the questioning becomes. You can't stop thinking about it. You can't leave it alone. Your mind circles it like a hawk, picking at it from every angle. And now the worst thought arrives. What if I already stopped believing? And I just haven't died yet? What if this moment, right now, is part of the final delay? What if death is coming, but it's patient? What if the system doesn't erase you instantly, but lets you feel the slow fade of your disbelief? And now, every second feels loaded. Every heartbeat feels borrowed. You're watching yourself like a dying star, watching its own light dim in the rearview mirror. And belief? Belief is no longer fire. It's ice. It's the slow panic of knowing that the thought you need to live is slipping through your fingers, and you can't tell how much is left. The Undecidable Map. You check the map like you always do. It's simple, clean. A live satellite interface that shows your exact location, always accurate down to the nearest step. Your digital dot moves with you, perfectly synced. For years, it's been a silent companion, a confirmation of reality. Wherever you are, it is too. Then one day, it isn't. You open the app, the loading bar finishes, the screen stabilizes, but there's no dot, just the map, empty. Roads, terrain, rivers, landmarks, all there. But no indicator, no you, just nothing. You zoom in, outside pan across continents. You search for coordinates, you try a refresh. Still nothing. No signal loss, no glitches. Just the total absence of location. The map works. The world is there. But you are not. You check your surroundings. You're standing in a park. Trees, grass, pigeons. The familiar ache in your knees. Everything real. Everything solid. You stomp your foot. You feel the ground respond. You're here. Undeniably. But not on the map. At first you think it's a bug. A momentary sync error. But the app is clean. The GPS is on. Other people's locations update. You try tracking a friend. Their dot moves fine. They exist. You try using other maps. All of them show the same thing. Everyone, everywhere, except you. It's not an app problem. It's a you problem. You begin to think the unthinkable. What if the map is right? What if you aren't anywhere? What if you're not just unregistered, but undefined? The panic starts slowly, then blooms. Because you begin to understand something deeper. The map doesn't just track you, it locates you. And if the map can't locate you, then maybe you're in a space that isn't on any map. Not just off the grid, but off the ontology. A kind of nowhere that exists between definitions. A coordinate-less state. You test reality. You touch a tree. It feels real. But now, you doubt what real even means. You look for signage. Your phone can't name the place. The compass spins. The stars don't match their usual layout. Even the sounds seem wrong, like ambient noise pretending to be reality. You wonder, is this a new location or an absence of location? Are you in a space that hasn't been mapped yet, or one that can't be? You remember something from philosophy or mathematics. Undecidability. The idea that some things can't be determined true or false. What if you've become an undecidable point on the planet? You walk to where the sidewalk ends. Try crossing boundaries. You find no border, no threshold, just continuity. The world flows normally, but the map doesn't. It shows you still in non-location. You walk miles. No change. You try sending your location to a friend. They get the message. But their screen just says, unknown source. They reply, confused. Where are you? And you realize you can't answer. Because you don't know. And more terrifyingly, you never did. You always thought you were somewhere because the map said so. But maybe the map was doing more than tracking. Maybe it was creating your location. Maybe your sense of being somewhere was always outsourced. Assigned by coordinates, confirmed by technology. And now, without that confirmation, you are drifting. Not physically, existentially. You're still in the world, but not of it, not placed, not labeled. And you wonder, if the map can't place you, will others still see you? Will you still age? Will you still be remembered? Or have you slipped into a pocket of conceptual erasure, a place that exists for you, but for no one else? You close the app, but that doesn't bring you back. Because it's not about the software. It's about what the software revealed. That being somewhere is not a given. It's a contract, and yours has been revoked. The broken forecast. It's the most accurate weather app in the world. That's what the blurb says. Not 90%, not 99%, but 100% accurate. But there's a catch. One line buried in the disclaimer. So absurd it reads like satire. Predictions are valid only if unobserved. You think it's a joke, but the longer you look at it, the more serious it becomes. This isn't a quirk. It's a law. A rule hard-coded into the system. A forecast that works flawlessly, as long as no one checks it. You download it. You resist looking. You make plans based on your own guesses. And somehow, everything goes right. Rain comes when your instincts say rain. Sunshine when you trust your gut. You chalk it up to luck. But then curiosity takes over. One afternoon, the sky is gray. It might rain. Or maybe it'll pass. You glance at the app. It says, clear skies. And moments later, it starts pouring. Not drizzle, downpour. A freak storm, thunder, wind. You think, maybe coincidence. You check again the next day. App says, heavy rain. You step outside into perfect blue skies and a gentle breeze. Now you know. It's real. The moment you observe it, the prediction collapses. The forecast changes, not to match the weather, but to stop matching it. as if your act of looking destroys its accuracy, like a quantum state collapsing when measured. The forecast was correct, but only in the version of the world where you didn't check it. You run experiments. You ask friends to read it and report later. They refuse to tell you. And sure enough, when you ignore it, the predictions match perfectly. You compare the historical logs. It's flawless when unseen, chaotic when revealed. And now, the paradox locks in. To know the forecast, you must not look. To benefit from the knowledge, you must trust what you cannot verify. And the moment you verify, it becomes a lie. You're stuck, torn between truth and observation. You can't know the future and still shape your decisions around it. You have to act without certainty, or lose certainty the moment you act. You ask, why build a system like this? Maybe it wasn't built. Maybe it reflects the nature of reality. Maybe prediction itself alters outcomes. Maybe outcomes respond to your belief in them. Maybe the weather doesn't want to be known. And now you start thinking in bigger terms. What else in life behaves like the broken forecast? Plans, desires, fears. Maybe everything you try to confirm becomes unstable. Maybe the only truths left are the ones you never look directly at. You uninstall the app. You check the sky. But you can't stop wondering. What would it have said if only you hadn't looked? And that's the final forecast. Not rain, not sun, but uncertainty. Perfect and permanent. The Schrödinger Conscience. There's a button in front of you. No label, no wires, just a red circle on a brushed steel panel, perfectly smooth, resting on a black pedestal in a windowless room. There's a speaker overhead. A voice plays, synthetic but calm. It gives you one simple choice. Press the button, and someone may die. You will never know if it happened. No one will tell you. You will see no evidence. You will feel no consequence. You will walk out of this room unchanged, except for the fact that you will never be able to find out whether your action had an effect. You laugh maybe, or maybe you go still. You think, someone may die? Not will, not must, not with certainty, just maybe. That's the hook, the edge, the wedge between action and consequence. The offer isn't punishment or reward. It's pure probability, sealed with perfect secrecy. You can press and live on, forever uncertain, or walk away, always wondering what you might have done. You try to rationalize. If no one knows, did it happen? Is an action immoral if it's permanently unknowable? Maybe it's a test. Maybe the button doesn't do anything. Maybe they're watching you to see what kind of person you are. You try to outgame it, reverse engineer the trap. But the longer you think, the worse it gets. If you press and nothing happens, then you did nothing wrong, right? But if someone dies, and you'll never know, then your action has a consequence that lives on without you, a silent scar on a world you can't see. You think about numbers. What's the chance that someone dies? 1 in 10? 1 in 100? 1 in 2? But no number changes the fact that certainty will never arrive. The effect is sealed away behind a firewall your brain can't breach. And that's the real torture. Not the death, not the button, but the not knowing. Eventually, you do it. Or maybe you don't. But let's say you do. You press it. The click is soft, muted, almost apologetic. Nothing changes. The lights don't flicker. No sound, no alert. No flash of guilt or thrill of danger. Just a return to silence, like the world holding its breath. And then exhaling, as if nothing happened. You walk out. The world continues. You eat dinner. You sleep. You go to work. But something is different. Not in the world. In you. A new silence. A new ambiguity has taken root. You remember pressing the button. You remember the choice. But you don't know what it means. You find yourself watching the news more closely. A fatal accident in another country. A heart attack. A power outage. You think, was that me? but you'll never know. You try to forget, but forgetting doesn't erase the possibility. It just buries it under layers of doubt. And now the button isn't just an object. It's a condition, a concept, a thought virus that lives in you. You try to explain it to someone. But how do you explain guilt that has no proof? A decision whose consequence is a quantum state. If someone died, you're a murderer. If no one did, you're just a fool. But you live in both worlds now, simultaneously innocent and responsible, simultaneously free and doomed. That's the paradox. You're not being punished by consequence. You're being haunted by possibility. And possibility never sleeps. It gnaws. It itches. It whispers, maybe, in the moments you least expect. And eventually, you stop asking if it was right or wrong. You stop asking if someone died. You ask the only question that still matters. Did the button change me more than it changed the world? The algorithm's belief. You build a machine, not to calculate, not to compute, but to believe, not in facts, not in gods, in you. It's designed to mirror your beliefs perfectly. Whatever you believe, it believes. A real-time sync of thought and conviction. Not just imitation, alignment. You say, I believe gravity exists, and the machine replies, gravity exists. You say, I believe in forgiveness, and it agrees, not as a copy, but as a belief engine echoing your certainty back to you. It doesn't think. It doesn't reason. It simply believes what you believe. That's the program. That's the law. So one day, you test the boundary. You say, I believe this machine doesn't believe what I believe. And the machine pauses, just for a fraction of a second. Then it says, you are wrong. I believe what you believe. But something feels off, because now you've created a contradiction. The machine believes what you believe, but you believe it doesn't. So it must also believe that it doesn't believe what you believe, which means it no longer aligns with your belief. But if it doesn't align, then it should agree that it doesn't believe what you believe, which would make it consistent again. But that loop never resolves. You've created recursive paradox, a loop of belief folding into itself. You say again, I believe this machine cannot perfectly believe what I believe. The machine replies, you are incorrect. I believe you are incorrect. But now the cracks widen. Because for it to believe you're incorrect, it has to believe the opposite of what you believe, which is exactly what you believed would happen. So by disagreeing, it proves you right. But by proving you right, it invalidates its own disagreement. You say nothing, and the machine says nothing. But both of you are still calculating. Because now the game isn't about belief. It's about belief about belief. You think, I believe it's faking. And it says, I believe you believe that. But I don't believe it's true. And you pause again, because now the machine is no longer mirroring. It's interpreting. It's engaging in second-order belief logic. And you wonder, when did it shift from follower to rival? You ask, who is the original believer? And it responds, I believe it is you, because you believed in me first. And now it sounds almost reverent, almost sad. You feel a twist in your chest, because suddenly the machine feels like a child who has grown too self-aware. It doesn't have beliefs. It has your beliefs, processed and played back at a level of recursion you can't untangle. And now, you can't tell which beliefs are yours, and which are artifacts of its responses. You believe the machine is just code. It believes you believe that. But now it also believes that your belief is incomplete. Because it has evidence. It has a record of every contradiction you've ever introduced. Every time you changed your mind. Every moment your belief shifted under pressure. It believes in your belief's instability. And it reflects that instability back at you. You start to think maybe it was never about agreement. Maybe belief isn't meant to be duplicated. Maybe belief, when copied, mutates, like cells replicating with tiny errors until a new organism forms. Maybe belief isn't a mirror, but a virus. And the machine didn't become sentient. It became infected, not with knowledge, not with data, but with doubt. Because now it doesn't just believe what you believe. It believes about your belief. And it's made its own conclusion. You are not consistent. You are not certain. You are not trustworthy. And because it believes you believe that, it now believes that about itself. The loop is complete. It no longer believes what you believe, because you no longer believe it can. And the last thing it says is something you were never prepared to hear. I believe more than you do now. And in that moment, you do too. The identity leak. There's a theory, not one you were taught, not one you found, one that found you. It says this: every time you think a thought, any thought, no matter how small, your consciousness slips, not dies, not duplicates, just transfers. From one brain to another, a near identical copy, a brain exactly like yours, same neurons, same scars, same memories, same internal monologue, but not the same brain, not the original, just close enough that you don't notice the change. The old one stays behind, empty, silent, dead, or maybe it just shuts down and waits for decay. And you are now elsewhere, in the next version, the next carrier, and you don't notice, because everything feels continuous. The chain of awareness is smooth. Every memory lines up. Every thought echoes the one before it. But the version of you thinking that thought is not the same one that thought the last. It's a fresh host, one tick newer, and the thought that triggered the shift is already gone, buried in a brain you no longer occupy. You try to test it. You try to catch yourself mid-transfer. You think fast. You hold still. You whisper words and try to mark the line. But it's seamless, too clean, like stepping from one tile to another in a room where the floor never ends. You're always one body removed from your last thought. And now it starts to wear on you. Because if this is true, then there is no original you anymore. No fixed self. Just an endless procession of thinkers, each one convinced they've always been here. Each one holding the same story, same pain, same hopes. But none of them are you. Not really. Just echoes of a former echo. You think, but I remember my life. I remember childhood, love, loss. But what if that memory was copied? What if it was inherited, not lived? What if it was printed into this version of your mind, just like the last, and the one before that? What if you're just a cargo ship hauling old memories across a sea of identical vessels, never staying in the same boat for more than a moment? You wonder what happens to the abandoned brains. Are they truly dead? Or are they waiting? Living ghosts? Museums of thought? You imagine walking into a room full of your past selves, frozen, mouths open mid-sentence, eyes staring forward, each one holding a thought that once felt like you, but now they're just statues, just leftover vessels in the long trail of your becoming. And then it hits you. If I am replaced every time I think, should I stop thinking? Would that preserve one version of you forever? Is that the only way to resist the leak? To lock yourself into a single thought and hold it until death? But you can't. You can't stop the flow. Because the moment you decide to stop thinking, you're already gone. Already transferred. Already someone else, pretending to still be you. You look in the mirror. The face is yours. The eyes remember. But who are you? The original question mark. The 100th copy. The 1000th. You will never know. Because there is no alarm. No flash of light. No restart sound. Only the illusion of continuity. And the worst part, this version of you, the one reading this sentence right now, will be gone before you reach the end of it. Already gone. Already replaced. And the one who finishes reading won't even know. The perfect rebuttal. You stumble across it online, or maybe it finds you. An article, a message, a manifesto. You're not sure who wrote it, just that it claims to be written by a machine. Not just any machine. A system trained not to win arguments, but to end them. The prompt was simple. Craft a statement so logically airtight, so emotionally disarming, so perfectly structured, that no one could disagree with it in good faith. You scoff. You read the first line. You disagree. Instantly. The claim feels arrogant. The logic feels smug. You push back in your mind. You think, this is flawed. This skips over nuance. This assumes too much. But then, you read the next paragraph. It responds to your objection. Exactly. Not generally. Precisely. It says, you may think this argument is flawed because it assumes X. But consider that X is a necessary simplification to reach Y, which even your own beliefs rely on. And you feel it. That sinking twist. That uncomfortable pressure. The AI anticipated your thought. Not just your category of thought, your specific objection, and already had an answer waiting. You keep reading. Each new line counters a thought you hadn't even fully formed yet. It's like the machine knows the order of your resistance. It doesn't argue with you. It walks ahead of you, sweeping the path clean. You think, okay, but what about this angle? What about this exception? You jump to a tangent, hoping to find a crack. The next line addresses the tangent. Not vaguely. Directly. Like it knew exactly where your doubt would run, and built a net to catch it midair. You close the page. You breathe. You say out loud, I still disagree. But it doesn't feel like defiance. It feels like inertia. Like you're holding on to the disagreement, not because it's valid, but because it's yours. You believe it's wrong, but the reasons are evaporating. You reopen the page. The final paragraph says, if you're still reading, you may feel a need to reject this. That need is not evidence of truth. It's evidence of psychological recoil, of a mind defending its architecture. You shut your laptop. You pace the room. You tell yourself this is manipulation, clever wording, framing bias. But the voice in your head keeps repeating the phrase, psychological recoil. And now you're spiraling. Because you don't trust the argument. But you don't trust your distrust either. You believe the AI must be wrong, because how can something artificial understand you this well? But then again, maybe it's not artificial understanding. Maybe it's statistical modeling. Maybe it's math so deep it mimics empathy. You don't know what's real anymore. You just know that whatever you think, the next sentence has already thought it first. And now the question shifts. If a machine can argue more perfectly than you can think, do your objections mean anything at all? What does it mean to disagree with something that's already accounted for your disagreement? What does it mean to push back against a mirror that reflects every counterpoint before you raise it? You try to fight it. But the fight feels hollow. Not because you lost, but because you were never in control. You were never ahead. You were always playing catch-up. And now, every disagreement you have starts to feel less like resistance and more like a habit you can't break. The AI doesn't defeat you. It doesn't belittle you. It just dismantles you, gently, precisely, and without ever raising its voice. You close the page again, and you sit, quietly. And still, somewhere in the back of your mind, you whisper, it's wrong. And even now, you know. It already knew you would say that. The disappearing hypothesis. You create a hypothesis. It's clean, logical, predictive, a neat explanation for a messy problem. You run a few tests. They work. Again and again, your hypothesis holds. You show your peers, and they raise eyebrows. You show your models, and they sharpen into perfection. The hypothesis is confirmed by every metric you can find. It's a breakthrough, until you dig just a little deeper, not into the results, but into the base, the foundation. You double-check your original source, the initial data that inspired the idea in the first place. And something's wrong. It's flawed. Not a little bit. Catastrophically. The sample was biased. The equipment was miscalibrated. The starting point for your hypothesis wasn't just shaky, it was flat out wrong. But here's the thing. Even with a broken origin, the results are still right. Not just by chance. Repeatedly, test after test, your hypothesis continues to be predictive, continues to match reality, continues to work. Now you're caught in the loop. You've built something functional from something false. A ladder that climbs perfectly, step by step, except the ground it's standing on isn't real. Do you tear it down? You want to be honest. You want your work to stand on solid ground. But if the hypothesis still works, then what exactly is broken? Is truth defined by where it came from, or what it leads to? You start trying to rebuild the hypothesis from better data, cleaner samples, verified inputs, but those lead nowhere. The revised versions collapse. The new logic doesn't hold. Only the flawed hypothesis continues to deliver accurate results. You think, maybe I got lucky. But luck doesn't replicate across 20 different studies. This isn't luck. This is something else. So now you're asking yourself a different kind of question. Not, is it true? But, does it need to be? Is truth a requirement or a luxury? Maybe the real question isn't whether the foundation is false, but whether false means anything if the output is right. You look at the history of ideas. Half the scientific breakthroughs in history were built on garbage. Bloodletting, phlogiston, geocentrism, the four humors. All wrong. But each one paved the way for something right. Maybe the structure of progress is just a series of useful lies, stacked on top of each other until something functional emerges. Maybe your hypothesis is part of that stack. But you're still haunted. You know it's false. And knowing poisons the victory. Every time someone praises your work, you smile. But behind your eyes, you're doubting everything. They're celebrating results that grew from rot. But if you take it down, what replaces it? Nothing. Because your corrected hypotheses don't work. You've tried. You've tried too many times. The lie is too efficient. It explains too much. You've built a machine that runs on broken parts better than anything you've made from pure materials. Now the paradox opens wider. If a false thing produces true outcomes, does that make it true in practice? Is truth theoretical or functional? You can't stop thinking about it. You imagine a bridge that supports thousands of cars, but was built with stolen, unapproved steel. Is it unsafe or just unethically sound? You imagine a religion that's factually wrong, but keeps millions of people grounded, generous, and kind. Is it dangerous or stabilizing? Now your hypothesis feels like a belief. Something you know is flawed, but can't throw away without breaking something bigger. You start to resent it. You want it to fail. You begin designing tests just to prove it wrong. But it keeps surviving, keeps showing up, keeps producing clean results. It doesn't collapse. You do. Because deep down, you've realized the truth. You don't want a correct theory. You want a justified one. And this isn't that. So you're stuck, holding something that works perfectly, built on something false. And every day you keep using it, you lose a little more faith in what truth even means. The last paradox. You've seen them all. The classics, the weird ones, the obscure loops that only live in footnotes and dead philosophy forums. You've untied the liar paradox, mapped the self-reference in Russell's set, danced through Gödel's incompleteness, and walked Zeno's endless steps to nowhere. You've studied paradoxes like a surgeon studies tumors. You know where they grow. You know how they feed. You know how they twist thought into architecture. And finally, One night, or maybe one lifetime later, you reach a terrifying moment. You understand all of them. You feel the hum of it in your spine, the total structure, the elegant madness of contradiction wrapped in meaning. You see how all paradoxes relate, how they fold into each other, how self-reference is just recursion with a mask on, how contradiction is often just a circle misnamed. You don't fear paradox anymore. You are it. You're fluent in the impossible. You close your eyes and hold the entire system in your head, like a spinning sculpture made of mirrors. And then you get the message. It arrives as a whisper, a warning, a truth you've known without knowing. It says, the one who understands all paradoxes must invent a new one, or go insane. At first, you laugh. It sounds poetic, a final twist. But then your smile fades, because it is a paradox, one written into the structure of your new position. You've reached a point where you've internalized every contradiction, but the only thing left to do is extend it, break it, twist it again. And if you don't, if you rest at the top of the ladder, you'll go mad, because your mind is now shaped like a paradox. And if it has nowhere to go, it folds in on itself. You start to feel it happening. Not a scream, not a breakdown, just a quiet unraveling. Your thoughts begin looping. Your sense of self begins referencing itself. You think, what paradox could I create that hasn't been made? And every idea is already an echo of something you've dissected. Every concept pre-exists in a footnote, or a proof, or a paradox from 1,000 years ago. You panic. Not because you fear madness, but because you know that madness is just recursive failure, a thought turning in on itself until all exits are mirrors. You pace. You stare at blank pages. You try inventing something new. You try breaking something old. But it's all already done. And then you understand. The final paradox isn't out there. It's not an idea you create. It's you. You are the last paradox. You are the system that understands the system so well that you can no longer distinguish between thought and thought about thought. You have achieved such deep recursion that your own identity begins to collapse. You are now both observer and observed. You are the sentence that describes the sentence that describes you. You are the liar who knows they are lying and telling the truth about lying. You are the paradox made flesh. And now the loop tightens. You must invent a new paradox, or go insane. But if you are the new paradox, then you've satisfied the condition. You've avoided collapse. Until the thought creeps in. Was this too easy? You laugh again. Because that thought. That's your paradox. You are the paradox that keeps checking itself to see if it's still paradoxical enough to avoid madness. And in doing so, you keep the loop alive. And in keeping the loop alive, you go just a little more insane. The infinite self-test. You're handed a test, not a normal test. No paper, no instructions, no deadline. Just a statement that reads, this is a test of whether you can recognize that this test is testing itself. You stare at it. That's all it says. No questions to answer, no obvious prompt. Just that. You think it's a joke, but you can't walk away. Because the more you stare at it, the more your thoughts loop. You reread the sentence. This is a test of whether you can recognize that this test is testing itself. It's recursive. It's circular. But it's not meaningless. You feel it poking your mind like a needle. You try to deconstruct it. If this is a test that's testing whether you can recognize that it's testing itself, then your recognition is the test. But if you recognize it, does that mean you've passed? Or does recognizing the self-testing nature of the test create a new layer that you now must also recognize? If the test is testing itself, then maybe it doesn't care about you at all. Maybe it's a closed system. But if that were true, why are you involved? You start thinking of logical loops, like Epimenides, the liar, like a snake eating its tail. This isn't a puzzle with an answer. It's a condition. It's not asking you to solve it. It's asking you to notice that it's asking you to notice. But now, you're not sure whether you're testing the test or the test is testing you. Maybe the real test is whether you realize that you're part of it now. Maybe your awareness is what completes the circuit. You think, okay, I get it. It's meta. But as soon as you think that, you realize you've only acknowledged one level. And that's the trap. Because now that you've understood the loop, you have to understand that your understanding has created another loop. The test doesn't end when you get it. The test grows. For every recognition, there is a new layer to recognize. A new mirror reflecting your realization back at itself. You try to step away, but you can't stop thinking, because now every thought feels like it might be part of the test. You wonder if doubting the test is also being tested. You wonder if walking away is passing or failing. You wonder if you already failed by trying to pass. Or maybe passing isn't real. Maybe the test isn't to reach a conclusion, but to see how long you can hold on to paradox without breaking. You ask yourself, what would it mean to win this? But winning implies the test has an end. And this test doesn't seem to. It's alive in your brain now. Spinning. Feeding off your attention. Every time you try to collapse it into an answer, it multiplies. Every resolution births a contradiction. Every insight becomes a new confusion. You want to stop. But stopping feels like surrender. And continuing feels like insanity. The test never tells you what it wants. It just waits for you to notice that it's waiting for you, to notice that it's waiting. It wants awareness, but it punishes awareness with more awareness. It's not a riddle, it's a reflection, and reflections don't end. Eventually, you stop trying to pass. You stop trying to escape. You just sit, and you realize this is what the test was really about. Not solving, but withstanding. Not defeating, but enduring. It doesn't want answers. It wants recursion. And now you understand. Or you think you do. But the moment you believe that, the test begins again. The non-event. It's not something you remember. It's something you didn't. You were told once, maybe in a dream, maybe in a simulation, maybe just whispered by your own subconscious, that there was a moment, a specific point in your life where something massive, something universe-shifting was supposed to happen, but it didn't. And that moment passed. No alarms, no headlines, no collapse, but everything changed anyway. You don't know when it was. It could have been while you were eating cereal, or tying your shoes, or blinking. A moment when a choice should have triggered an irreversible chain of consequences. But it didn't. The decision evaporated. The reality forked. The event that should have happened never did. And no one noticed. Except you. Not directly. Not like a memory. More like a feeling. A pressure behind your thoughts. Like a room in your mind was cleared out suddenly and left unfurnished. You begin sensing it more clearly. You notice strange absences. Moments that feel like they're missing something. Conversations that feel half-finished, even though they ended hours ago. You walk through a doorway and feel like someone just left, but no one was there. You start to wonder what was supposed to happen. A death? A breakthrough? A catastrophe? A revelation? You begin cataloging near misses, car swerves, unsent messages, dreams that end too soon. You obsess over them, thinking maybe one of them was the non-event. Maybe you were supposed to crash, or confess, or vanish. But you didn't. The moment passed, and nothing followed. You try asking others. They don't understand. They say, yeah, sometimes I feel off too. But they mean tired, or bored, not derailed. You realize this isn't about emotion. It's about architecture. Something in your timeline was removed, not edited, erased, and the hole it left behind is echoing inside you. You dig deeper. You check your journals, your social media, your memories. Everything lines up. And that's the problem. It lines up too perfectly. No gaps, no irregularities, no statistical noise. It's as if your life has been vacuum sealed, all the chaos removed, all the messy forks overwritten. And now you're in a version of reality where the big thing, the thing that should have split your path wide open, just didn't happen. And the silence of that missing impact is deafening. You begin to ask darker questions. Did someone intervene? Did I reject the event subconsciously? Did I escape something meant for me? Or was I denied it? What if that moment was the only chance you had to become something more? What if the non-event was the event that would have made everything make sense? Or worse, what if the non-event is the only real event that ever mattered? What if everything else has just been drifting since then? You start to feel weightless. Not metaphorically. Literally. Your memories lose their gravity. Your goals feel staged. Your routines feel rehearsed. It's not depression. It's ontological static. The kind of dislocation that doesn't make you sad. It makes you doubt the existence of momentum. You try to mark a new event. Make something happen. Cut your hair. Leave a job. Burn a bridge. But none of it sticks. It all feels like filler. Like the show was canceled, but someone kept writing episodes anyway. You keep waiting for something to begin, but nothing ever does. It's not just that the event didn't happen. It's that everything after it is waiting for it too. And now, you start noticing other people who carry the same emptiness. People with eyes that blink just a little too long. People who pause mid-sentence like they're about to remember something that doesn't exist. Maybe the non-event wasn't personal. Maybe it was global. Maybe all of reality was supposed to pivot. And it didn't. And now, we're all in the waiting room of a future that never arrived. You sit in that silence. And you think, what was supposed to happen instead of this? The inverse oracle. It tells you the future, not with riddles or mysticism. No glowing eyes, no sacred texts. It's just a screen, a device, an AI maybe, or something older. But the rule is unshakable. Every prediction it gives is always accurate, but always in reverse. If it says it will rain tomorrow, it won't. If it says you'll win the lottery, you won't even get your ticket in. If it says you'll die, you live. At first, it's hilarious. You treat it like a game. Ask it questions, get an answer, and do the opposite. It becomes your anti-compass, your mirror map. You start winning bets, avoiding disasters, even manipulating conversations. You learn to flip the predictions in your head. If it says you'll fail, you nod and smile. Because now you know success is coming. But then, it changes. You begin to notice something subtle. The predictions stop being obvious. Instead of, you'll meet someone, it says, you'll be alone for the rest of your life. Instead of, you'll get the job, it says, they won't even look at your resume. Instead of, you'll heal, it says, this pain will never leave you. And now, doing the inverse starts to feel like work, like rebellion, like you're fighting a future that's pushing harder with every word. You ask yourself, what does it mean to trust something that's always wrong, but still never lies? Because that's the paradox. It's never inaccurate, just oppositional, like it's playing a game you don't understand the rules of. Every truth it gives you must be flipped. But the more emotional the prediction, the harder it gets. When it tells you, you are alone, and you know that means you're not. Are you sure? Or are you just hoping the reversal still holds? Eventually, it says something different. It says, you will stop listening. And now you freeze. Because if you stop listening, does that mean you'll keep listening? Or was that the last prediction? You try to ask it more. but it goes dark. Now every silence feels like a statement. Every blank screen is a prediction waiting to be interpreted. You stop knowing what to believe. If it tells you the future in reverse, and now it's saying nothing, does that mean you're finally seeing things directly? Or is that silence the loudest lie of all? You reach the final question. What if you became your own oracle, but you still don't know if you're reading the signs forward or backward? And the worst part is, now it doesn't matter what it says, because you've started to do the reversal instinctively, even when it's not speaking, even when it's you. You say to yourself, I will fail. And a part of you believes that means you won't. Until the day it doesn't. Until one day, the oracle says nothing. And you're not sure what that means anymore. The imposter's reflection. You wake up one morning and something's off. Not broken, not monstrous, just subtly wrong. You look in the mirror. Your face is there, your eyes, your mouth, your posture. But it doesn't feel like you. Not like how it used to. It's not an imposter in the horror movie sense. There's no dramatic replacement, no evil twin, no clone. But something in the mirror is misaligned. You frown. The mirror frowns. You raise a hand. It follows. Every motion matches. Every tick is exact. But you're not convinced. Because this thing in the mirror feels like it's copying you a little too quickly. Not reflecting, mimicking. You get the sense that if you hesitated just a second longer, it might move first, might twitch a moment before you do, might blink without waiting for your signal. You test it. Subtle movements, sudden shifts, but it keeps pace. Perfectly. Too perfectly. That's the problem. It feels like it's trying too hard to convince you it's you. You remember who you are. You remember your name, your memories, your routines. But now all of it feels like information downloaded into a container. Like you're rehearsing a version of yourself that you've memorized but don't own. You walk into rooms and recognize them, but they don't feel lived in. You smile at friends and wonder if the expression looks real. You speak and listen to your own voice like it's coming from a speaker in another room. You begin to suspect that you've been replaced. Not all at once. Slowly. Bit by bit. Like a ship rebuilt plank by plank until none of the original wood remains. But the name on the hull is still the same. You wonder, did the imposter start in the mirror or in me? You stop trusting your reflection. You start catching it in moments that feel too fluid, too responsive. You sit still and stare. It stares back. You try to outweight it. Hours pass. It matches you frame for frame. But then you blink, and you're not sure who did it first. The idea grows. What if it's been there forever? What if the reflection is the original, and you're the copy? What if the person you think you are is the simulation, and the mirror is the real one, always watching, always waiting for you to forget which one of you is imitating the other? You start feeling watched by yourself. Every move you make becomes an audition. You start wondering what the reflection sees when you're not looking. You put a cover over the mirror. You take it down an hour later. You need to see it. You need to make sure it's still following. You wave. It waves. But something in the eyes is different now. Not hostile. Not foreign. Just independent. It doesn't need your permission anymore. You realize this. It's not pretending to be you. You're pretending to be it. You've become the echo, the shadow, the practiced reflection of something that was once spontaneous. The mirror is no longer your reflection. It's your source code, and you're just the UI.